Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and start the February 16th board meeting for the Sherwood School District. And I just want to say real quick, we're so pleased to be meeting in person, and we appreciate the gift of time to let us reschedule this meeting to fully prepare after last week's events. So with that, we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to add a couple things. We, as many of you know, we sort of revised our guidelines, and of course we have, COVID and pandemic rules. And December 15th, Director Thorin led that. So I'm just going to take a minute real quickly. I think obviously everyone's here and we're masked and we're doing what we need to do. But just to kind of remind people that obviously for now masks are required. Anybody who exhibits behavior, threats, harassment, bullying will be trespassed. We need to be quiet. So in-person attendees just need to be respectful of those presenting once we get to presentations. So that's no clapping, booing, hissing, cheering, pointing, trying to communicate verbally with members of the board, because the board needs to be paying attention. And if at any time these guidelines aren't adhered to, we're going to have to call the meeting to a recess and adjourn via live stream and ask everyone else to leave. So I don't anticipate that's going to happen. I just wanted people to be clear that those are the rules, and we're all kind of navigating this new system, and hopefully a lot of it's awfully temporary. So with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, consent agenda carried. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next section, and that is Spotlight On. And we're going to have presentation. Is that Mr. Bennett? Okay, Mr. Bennett, and we'll have the elementary STEM program team. So you're welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much, team, for coming. And it's an exciting new program that we've launched that I think a lot of you know about. And this was our first year with an elementary STEM program. These 4 teachers started, and I'll turn it over to Marlene Carroll to introduce the team and talk a little bit about what they're up to.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cordy, Board Chair Hecker, and school board members. At the start of the 21-22 school year, the district opened its very first elementary STEM program. And the elementary program provides our young learners with hands-on experiences that focus on collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication. Our STEM teachers provide rich and engaging instruction that gives all students the opportunity to experience essential learning within the STEM disciplines. Tonight, our elementary STEM teachers are here to share their great work. The presentation tonight will go over the mission and vision, the team's year-long focus, our STEM summer camp, which we did this past summer, the benefits of STEM, what STEM lessons really look like, and some testimonials. Also, please note just that throughout the presentation, we tried to add a lot of pictures, but the students' faces are covered to protect their privacy. So with that, our Hawksview STEM teacher, Fanny Bretsch, is going to start us off.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy and board. I'd like to begin with our mission and vision. So our STEM team, we got together and decided our mission was going to be that all K-5 students will receive equitable access to hands-on experiences that focus on collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, communication, that is lending to sustained interest in engaging in STEM beyond elementary school into middle, high, and beyond. And our vision is to become an accomplished STEM program at the elementary level. And we wanted to provide extension learning in the physical sciences, technology, engineering design standards that are outlined by the International Society of Technology and Education and the Next Generation Science Standards. I would like to go ahead and introduce Terry Evers, the STEM teacher at Ridges.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy. Thank you, board. Our focus here really is multifaceted. It starts with the ISTE, or International Society of Technology and Education standards, and starts with they have empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, and global collaborator. So we integrate all of those into our lessons. And so we've done several units that involve technology. So we have those embedded in those. Second, I'm going to slide over to the NGSS. That's Next Generation Science Standards. Those are, it's called a 3D standard that is based on core standards. It's more the content, but also it encompasses the cross-cutting concepts. You'll see that down in pink, and then practices, which are also the third part of the standards. And that's really what we want students to be able to do. The content is more of the core standards that we just see in the green there. And so what we've done is, we kind of talked to our teachers a little bit, administrators, and looked at really the priority standards we want to accomplish in the 36 weeks or so of STEM class that we see. It's 36 hours. So we really identified the physical science standards that we'll be really prioritizing from the NGSS in our STEM classes, with earth sciences and biological sciences more so in the classroom. And so you can see what we're working on primarily with the science standards. In kindergarten, we're really focusing on those forces, and then the pushes and pulls and interactions for the science part. First and second, we'll focus on waves. We've done a lot with light and sound, and also working with matter. Third grade, we really is revisiting the standards on forces and interactions. We're currently doing that right now. And then fourth and fifth, right now we're really diving into energy, and we'll be doing a several-week unit on that, and also with waves and properties of matter. So throughout the cross-cutting concepts, things like patterns and structures and practices of embedding that, looking at a scientific model, for example, or constructing ideas, or there's several of them, but those are embedded throughout all the lessons in various quantities. We also really focus on engineering design standards. So sometimes we'll have the science standards combined with engineering design, and maybe the technology standards are fused with the engineering design. It's not just one thing or another. There's a lot of crossover. And then what's been really nice is that we've been able to really embed those math practice standards up there, that those are a common thread through not only what we do, but teachers do in their own classrooms too, with mathematics. And so those are a K-12 strand that go all the way through. So we've been doing quite a few of those as well. All right, so who's next? Hey, Brenda Selby is coming up next to tell us about the summer camp.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy and board members. We were fortunate this summer when we first came on board with our STEM program that we were able to offer a STEM summer camp. And we very quickly and efficiently came up with our summer camp plan. And it was really aimed at being a 3-day introduction to STEM and to the program, so that when we started the program this year, kids had an idea of what this STEM thing might be. And we chose in our summer program to focus on robotics and engineering. So we were able to let these students be the first ones to explore one of our robots called Dash and Dot, or I guess we think we just use Dash during the summer. So they got to get out the Dash robots and the Sphero robots, which kids, of course, thought those were great to get out and explore with. And then we also brought in the engineering. So they were, building and designing. At that point in time, we had Summer Olympics going on. So we decided to go with a Summer Olympic theme, and they were coming up with their own robot Olympic games and coming up with the design for their, soccer field or whatever it happened to be. And I know we had a blast. I know when the principals opened up the signups for that, it filled up quite quickly. And I think there were wait lists in a lot of buildings for that. So kids came excited, and I've had several students actually say to me, my mom signed me up for this and I wasn't really sure what it was going to be, but man, that was a lot of fun. So it was a great opportunity for kids to see what this new STEM thing was. And hopefully they then came into it sharing with their friends that, they got to meet the STEM teachers and got to try out some of the things. So it was a really cool opportunity. And I know we all loved jumping right in, even in the summer, brand new and ready to share our expertise with kids and learn with each other. So next we have Holly Phillips. She is our Archer and Ridges STEM teacher.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy and board. So some of the benefits of STEM, we really focus on 21st century skills of the 4 C's with communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. So all of our lessons really geared to allowing students to be able to collaborate and communicate together, to be able to showcase their work in a multitude of creative ways, and also to really dig deeper into the STEM concepts and really be able to critical think about them. We also really promote growth mindset and really giving students that confidence to be able to persevere and solve challenging problems. Another thing that's really great is the hands-on opportunities. We always have a space in all of our lessons for students to be able to build, create, and make, and be able to explore with our materials. Also, at the beginning of all of our lessons, we always highlight STEM careers just so that students are able to see just how many careers fall underneath the umbrella of STEM. And we also try to make sure that we give students equitable and diverse opportunities and experiences. And what's so great about STEM is that there is an entry point for all students to be successful.
Well, a typical STEM lesson looks like, is up here on the board, is we always start with a STEM leader. So just like what Holly was saying, we really try to provide a diverse array of leaders from around the world, from all sorts of backgrounds. And so we really give kids, try to do it really unique with something they haven't really thought of a person who is in STEM and who is a leader. And so we've really tried to emphasize that. We do that at the beginning of each class, and sometimes we'll have a little video, a little bit more information about what they do and where they're from and what they've accomplished and so forth. And then our lessons, and we're really working harder on this, is really anchoring it in phenomena. So it's something that's makes kids wonder, they're curious, they're what they would want to question. And so we start, if we're looking at the topic, what is a phenomena, or some examples of that they could kind of get curious about. And then we always give the lesson targets so they have an understanding of what we're aiming for, and then any vocabulary. We'll have a lesson introduction, and we'll show you these components in a minute, just an example, and introduce the lesson at hand, what's going on. And then a lot of hands-on experience. I don't think we've had a single class where we've sat and wrote anything or just read a document or anything like that. It's all hands-on, diving in. And then we have some reflection at the end to kind of digest what's been learned.
This is an example of one of our STEM leaders. We really try to make sure that in addition to kids seeing people from all areas of STEM and things that they might not be aware of in the STEM fields, we really want to make sure that kids are seeing a wide array of people that look like them, people who they can relate to, where they have the opportunity to say, hey, I could be like that when I grow up. So we really try to make sure we have a wide range of our STEM leaders. This particular STEM leader is Reshma Saujani, and she was a founder and author of Girls Who Code. So we also try to align our STEM leaders with what we're teaching. So if it's a technology unit, we're finding video game designers or people who are using technology in the medical field. If we're in a science unit, we're finding people who are related to the science field. So we're really trying to find people where kids are able to say, oh, wow, we're using technology here. We can also use it here in a real life application as an adult. So that's really what we focus on our STEM leaders. And honestly, it's quite fun to go down the rabbit hole of researching these people and finding their accomplishments. And, we found with the Olympics, we were finding, an athlete and former Oregon Duck athlete turned engineer at Intel, and he's working on technology for athletes to be at their absolute highest performance. So we try to find people that, are engaging and exciting and also provide opportunities for kids to see, hey, I could be here when I grow up. These people, look like me. I can see myself here. So, all right.
So after our introduction of our STEM leader, we move into our phenomena, and the phenomena always has some kind of basis in what we're teaching. So what you're looking at here, we are teaching about energy transfer, and they were getting ready to do Rube Goldberg machines, and we introduced the phenomena of energy transfer through a Rube Goldberg machine because you can visually see it. And it gives us an opportunity to get the kids engaged and get them excited about what we're about to learn and get them questioning and wondering like, what is happening here? And then we have an opportunity to link it to the science concepts that are explaining the phenomenon. So it's pretty cool. The kids really enjoy it. They look forward to it. They expect it now. They really understand the routines of the lessons. And they're always super excited. We use a lot of Giphies, we use videos. Sometimes it's just a picture, and we get a lot of questions and conversation going before we move into the hands-on aspects of the lesson.
And then after that, we always include our lesson targets. This includes our lesson goal and our essential question. And our essential question really is kind of what we want students to know by the end of that unit. And both of these are grounded in the standards that Terry talked about on that former slide. So the NGSS, ISTE, and the engineering design process and math practices. That's where these come from. And we also have our vocabulary. So we always make sure that we have important vocabulary that are going to help students be successful in the lesson. And we also give opportunities for students in small groups to be able to discuss throughout the unit of what these vocabulary words mean to them and how they relate to the lesson.
Our lesson introduction, this is an example we just did a couple weeks ago, and then we've been fortunate to have the Summer and Winter Olympics, so we took advantage of that. And so we introduced the kids to curling, which I don't know about you, but I learned a lot about curling, and we've been watching it on the Olympics, trying to still figure it out. But we faked it, and with Sphero robots that are a ball, and they do amazing things. And so we had the kids actually block program and curl, and they even use yardsticks to sweep. And so anyway, this just kind of details what, basically we're going to be doing, the objective and the parameters and so forth. And so we always do that. So we kind of model it and then also have it up on a slide to make sure so kids can refer to it throughout the lesson. So I think I do the next one too. Yeah, and so, this has been mentioned before, it's hands-on experiences. This is more examples of the Spheros going through mazes, and the Spheros are really cool because they embed so many mathematical practices and skills in there too. The kids were all the way down to third grade are learning about degrees of a circle and applying. I got to make a 90-degree angle. We should do 45 degrees this way for 3 seconds, and with their block programming and so forth. And so a lot of hands-on experience. We're always breaking out the Kiva planks. You'll see those wooden planks come up in some future pictures here. So kids are always engaged hands-on and collaboratively every time.
All right, and we just have a few slides of just some photos of examples of things we've done this year. So you can notice there's that blue robot coming in a few of those photos, and those are all different grade levels and just showing the differentiation we were able to use with that robot and be able to give kids that experience being able to learn how to block code. The other pictures, some of them have with the cups have the other one, Sphero bolts, where students, like Terry said, were also able to use real world math in that by deciding what degrees, duration, and speed they were going to have it move to be able to go to do different tasks. Kindergartens up at the top, they made marble tracks, and then we talked a lot about motion, speed, force, push, and pull, which they had a ton of fun with that. And then the bottom left was a Kiva plank tower we did at the very beginning of the year. They had to make different types of towers with different bases and test for durability. And this was also just a great way for us to build community and collaboration and communication at the beginning of the year with our students.
And as Holly was saying, here's another picture from Hawks View of some of the 4th and 5th graders creating the tallest Kiva plank towers. It became a huge challenge for the kiddos, and we had kiddos standing on step ladders and like, I mean, the towers were taller than I was. It was just amazing. The fact that they were really taking in math and thinking about different shapes that would be more sturdy than other shapes, and they would, if, you know, if they failed, they would improve it and change their design. And it was just amazing the whole day, just going back and forth, and the collaboration, the talking, and the critical thinking that was happening when they had to do the problem solving to create the tallest tower. You see some kiddos in the top right, more pushes and pulls, and they're doing Olaf catapults. Back at the winter time, they had so much fun with it. They enjoyed it so much. We had a choice day that came up right in heading into winter break, and some of the older kids were also getting involved with the catapults because the materials were already there, and it was just a ton of fun. You also see some more dash and dot there, and some STEM bin choice building where the kiddos just have a variety of different STEM bins that include like plus blocks and magnetiles, and they just get a choice and are able to just build whatever their brain can imagine. So it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, so in the upper left, you can see some Sphero. That's a Sphero curling there. And to the middle upper, that was a simulated chemical disaster spill, and they had to program their dashes to go clean up the chemical spill. Well, each pom-pom is a chemical of some kind. I remember what we called it. It was something cool. Yeah. So on the upper right, we had an engineering challenge where character Rosie from a book had to go down a zip line. So they had to use their measurement skills and design. They were zip line vehicles to go down a fishing line and to be stable. And down the lower left is coding for the primary grade. So we really investigated this, and we found a product called Indies that code by color. So the primary kids, the colors represent different commands. So it's a very visual way to code for our kids before they get into block coding for their K1s. And in the middle there, we have light. And so we're doing light and sound. And so there's some different light studies. We're doing some things with reflection and refraction right now. A lot of cool stuff with that, with the science end of things. And then on the far right, in the lower right, before we started coding with the upper grades, we had the kids use cups and the symbols, and to get conceptually what coding was before we actually drug out all the technology. So, and so anything that we build is really in the engineering design process. The kids, we ask a question, we let's see, what's the next one? I should know. Plan, and then we create, and then we test it, and then we improve it, and then if we get a chance to share it. But a lot of times we talk to the kids like today all we're going to do is test, or we're going to go through and plan, create, test, and improve, and then that cycle goes over and over, and we try to relate that to different things that happen in the world, with car manufacturing or iPhones or, whatever it might be. So anyway.
Here's some photos from Middleton. We have up there a Kiva plank track where the kids were creating a roller coaster of sorts with Kiva planks and a ping pong type ball. We had a basketball hoop challenge where they were launching and they were having to figure out launch distances and launch powers with their dash robots, and they were using the meter sticks to get out and measure all that kind of stuff, and figuring out the ideal launch speed and distance and all of those things. We have kindergartners with their marble runs. Kindergartners were hilarious to watch with those. They loved them, and they were so successful, and they were working well together, and it was just fun to watch earlier in the year with them. There we also have on the right side 2 types of coding. Second graders had an option where they could use Indy, which is the screen free using the color blocks to code, or they could use Sphero within and make a maze for it. So they kind of got to, make some decisions there that would fit them. Like we had said previously, there's always an entry point for any child in STEM. This is a great example of that. Kindergartners made 3-dimensional houses early in the year, and it was a team-based project. One person made the pyramid, one person made the cube. With kindergartners in the beginning of the school year, that is a big undertaking. So I'm really proud of that picture. We have STEM bins. Sometimes I give them specific tasks. Sometimes it's a free build. And that particular child built a super cool thing out of brain flakes. So I wanted to showcase that one. We have some more Dash there. And then we had another, one of our Rube Goldberg machines. So those kids figured out how to use my cabinet doors and like wedge things in there and set up dominoes. The creativity and the teamwork that I see on a daily basis is so fun to watch and so fun to encourage. And it's great to see kids inspired to try new things. And, you know, they find things that they had no idea that they thought were fun or interesting. And that's really what we hope for, is that it inspires them to keep going with their STEM learning. So there are some Middleton examples.
Yeah, we, at the end of each lesson, we like to end with a reflection question. And so we just, and sometimes we'll show that at the beginning, just so they can think about it, marinate on it. And, you know, what have you learned and how have you improved in your coding skills so far? So personal reflection, self-assessment. And so we always end with something to sum it up and tie it back together.
So as you can tell from our slideshow, we all really love our job so far, and we really love the STEM program, but this isn't about us. This is for our students. And so this is just a few of the testimonials that we've collected over the year from students and from our community. So we did it from students in collaborative groups. We've made a lot of mistakes, but that's okay because we have learned a lot. I love STEM because I want to be an engineer when I grow up and I get to learn new things in STEM. I kept trying and trying and trying until it worked. And my kiddos absolutely love STEM class.
And we would like to leave you with one final quote, which we just love. And thank you so much for your time and opportunity to showcase our work this year. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. This is so impressive, and what a great base for all these kids. I'm so impressed. I mean, this is the stuff that's going on at all levels, and you know, my boys have been doing in college, frankly. And I thank you for teaching me some new vocabulary, because I don't know what dashes and spiros and marble huns are, but now at least I know they're related to STEM. So thank you all so much for being here. And any other comments?
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much for tonight. And this really thoughtful presentation, just really highlighting this amazing program. And even more than that, I mean, to actually hear from you with this, you know, this has been just a dream of the district. It was something that really rose to the top in strategic planning conversations. And when we visited with stakeholders relative to the student investment account, and hearing the four of you talk about what this looks like in real time, and testimonials from students, the photos, the thoughtful lessons. I mean, there is such importance in the critical thinking and the hands-on and the collaboration that comes within the work that you're doing with students, and just so appreciative. And I just want to end by saying it takes me back to when our capital improvement bond passed in 2016, and very quickly conversations started centering around the hope to create maker spaces in all of our elementary schools. And it was this amazing dream and sort of this goal that I don't know that we were ever sure we'd really be able to do. And now just hearing your passion and amazing work does all of our hearts good. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
And I would let you know that you are also all excused. You do not have to stay for the meeting. We appreciate you being here so late. And again, just incredible work. Thank you. Okay, so we will go ahead and move on to the report section of the agenda, and I will start with Superintendent Cordy.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. I have just a very brief report tonight. It's actually on the topic of traffic at the high school. So I just wanted to loop back around with some work that our team is doing to try to mitigate some of the traffic challenges there. So forgive me while I look at my notes to make sure I capture all of this correctly. Since early in the school year, the district has been working with our city partners to identify potential mitigation strategies. And so the biggest change has really been around an education campaign that happens in the high school by high school staff. Through communications and on-site signage, staff actively directing traffic, we've been able to improve the on-site traffic flow. So that has decreased the off-site backups to some degree. Parking lot enforcement has been increased and changes are underway for next year's student parking plan, all to mitigate the traffic on site near the drop-off. And in addition, our transportation department has adjusted bus schedules and procedures to also help relieve some of that traffic flow. And we continue to work with the city and county and hope that ultimately there will be able to be some long-term adjustments that'll further improve traffic flow around the new high school as Elwert Road and the surrounding area is developed. So thank you. That concludes my report.
And then we're going to go to the end and hear from our ASB student representative, Ms. Pierenboom.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. It's great to be back at the board meetings to represent the student body. In the past 3 months since I have been here, we've been really busy helping out in the community. We reached our service goal for our Sparrow Jilly and raised $4,080 for her. We also had our annual food drive in December, and we donated 1,000 pounds of canned food to the Tualatin Food Bank. And then recently we launched our Bowman pageant, and we have 11 great teams, and they have already raised $20,000, and we still have a week until the pageant. So we would like to invite everyone to come join us for the pageant. It is Saturday, February 26th at 6 p.m. at Sherwood High School. And if you would like to donate, there is a fundraiser on the PSO Facebook, and all the candidates have fundraisers on their Instagrams or in the newsletter. In other terms, we had Unity Week, and it was a great success. We had a really fun Voices Assembly with really impactful stories from our staff and students. And then we just look forward to the rest of the school year as we move into our third trimester traditions like prom and graduation. And then I would like to thank the school board on behalf of the students for keeping our schools open and safe for all students. Your hard work is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Angaro?
Yeah, I attended the anti-mask rally last Tuesday, and I gotta say, it was really incredible to see, the kids and the parents that were out there practicing their First Amendment rights and doing it peacefully and respectfully. It was very heartwarming. It was just magical to see that on that morning, and I just really am proud of the students and the parents that again kept it respectful and peaceful. Apparently things didn't go that way at the high school, and it sounds to me like it was sabotaged by some bad actors that I rebuke, and they were there causing problems, verbally abusing staff, and it's just unacceptable. And I've gotten some flack with that, online, and it's just that's fine. I see what these folks do day in and day out for our kids, and it's incredible, and they deserve respect for that. And they do not deserve what they had to deal with last Tuesday. But overall, I was at the district offices, and what I saw there was pretty incredible. And I just want to say thank you again to those students that were respectful and peaceful.
Director Adamson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to acknowledge that last week was Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. And I really want to hold up all of the staff in this district who have done, Ella, you were very kind to thank the school board for keeping the schools open. But I want you and every student in this district to know that it was our teachers and our instructional staff and our district staff, everybody who just pitched in every way possible, whether it was, assisting in kitchens or teaching an extra class or subbing for a colleague who needed to be out. I cannot thank you enough. There are not enough words to say thank you for everything that our staff do for our kids day in and day out in normal times. And this year we have asked more of our team than ever before. And I just want you to know that we see you, that we appreciate you, that we're grateful because this community has a history of rallying around its kids and of setting our differences aside and holding up our kids. And first and foremost among those are our teachers and our staff who just go above and beyond in ways large and small. And I also want to recognize the parent support organizations who just went above and beyond to try and make supporting Staff Appreciation Week something special for each and every member of this district. And I want to thank them for their generosity, creativity, and how they showed their support for our team. So just know that we are grateful for you, and I don't want that to get lost in all the things that have been happening. To know first and foremost, we care about you.
Director Thorne?
You said that so well. It is so true. It is the staff and the teachers that have kept us open and kept our kids in school. And I think I said this exact same thing last time, but the amount of gratitude that you all deserve from this community is immeasurable, to be quite honest. I, as a parent, am very grateful to you. And I, as a community member, am very grateful to you. I will say I have a kind of long-winded board report tonight, just to address a few things. So I'll get started so I can get through it. And I'm going to read from my notes because I tend to lose track when I'm speaking in front of people. I'm not good at it. So first, I want to thank the executive team for putting together what was a very informative executive session for the board and provided clarity on the events last week. I know that took a lot of time and added to your already very busy schedules, and I'm very grateful to you for doing that because it did provide a lot of clarity that was really needed. Second, while I was hoping really to not take up meeting time with additional statements about last week's events, due to the consistent and continued questions and consistent false statements coming from certain members of the community via social media, I feel compelled to. This, however, will be my official and final statement on the matter, as I would like to move forward, as I'm sure everybody else would. I want to thank also all the community members that have also sent an incredible amount of support for last week. I haven't been able to respond to all of you yet, but please know how grateful I am. I imagine that you've seen some of the beatings that are occurring on social media, and your kind words are very nice and supportive, and thank you for that. So here are the facts to answer any lingering questions regarding my involvement and any knowledge I had in last Tuesday's events. I heard about protests the same way that many others did, from my kids via a copied and pasted text message. While I support the Sherwood students and parents that planned this protest, I personally did not plan the protest. When my kids stated they wanted to participate, I decided to attend. First, as a mother in support of her two kids, and also to supervise them to ensure they conducted themselves in an appropriate and respectful manner. And second, to support the students and parents peacefully protesting. It's not a secret that I'm very much against the mask mandate. And as such, I do support the students and parents who want to stand up for their rights and peacefully make their voices heard. It was my understanding that the protest was to involve students peacefully protesting the mask mandates before school, knowing they would be turned away at the school entrance if not wearing a mask. Then, once denied entry, they would peacefully and respectfully leave and go to the district office to resume the protest, as to not disrupt classes and school function. If, and I emphasize if, because I was not made aware, or I haven't heard anything other than this effect, if there was a different intent at the high school, I was not made aware of it. I do not support any aggressive actions, whether it be verbally or physically, by attendees of the protest towards staff, students, and other attendees. I absolutely did not know that people from outside Sherwood planned to attend. When I met a couple of these individuals for the first time, as can be seen on video, I had no knowledge of what had occurred at the high school just minutes before. There are a few members of this community who, despite receiving a response from me and with the video to prove it, claim that I, quote, praised these outside instigators for their actions at the high school and that I knew these individuals prior to the protest. To clarify, I am on that video meeting them for the first time at the district and after the protest had occurred at the high school. And I had no knowledge at the time of what had or hadn't happened. I was not present there. One individual I did not know was from an organization called Free Oregon, and I thanked them for coming to support while having no knowledge of anything that had happened prior to that interjection. The other individual I knew from social media, and I did praise her for her advocacy and support of other students over the past year. She is also a high school student, slightly older than my own kids, and she has done quite a bit to support kids who find it difficult and unnecessary to wear masks for 8 hours a day. Prior to that day, however, and meeting her in person for the first time, I had only seen positive actions by her, but again, had no knowledge of anything that had occurred at the high school. I did not chant, "Let's go Brandon," at the protest. When a couple people started to do that, I immediately asked them to stop. This was a protest about masks. We were not there for a political protest, and that message was not supported. This protest was not an act against the district, and it was certainly not an act against the teachers. It was a statewide event against the state mandate. Since school districts are the ones charged with enforcing this mandate, the students protested at their schools and district offices respectfully. As a parent, community member, and elected official, I have the right to speak out against a policy imposed by an agency when and if I don't agree that that policy is in the best interest of my community and my constituents. Elected officials are policymakers, and it's our job to help put policies in place that we feel are best for the bodies that we represent. If there are policies imposed by other governing agencies, I not only have the right, but it's my obligation to oppose those policies in the hopes of affecting change. I am so very proud of the many students who peacefully stood up for their rights and made their voices heard. Speaking from experience as an adult, doing this can be incredibly hard as you inevitably prepare for the backlash that will follow from those that don't agree. So for those young students to stand up for themselves, that took an enormous amount of courage and strength, and you should be proud of yourselves. I will never forget the feeling that I had seeing how proud our middle schoolers were when they arrived at the district office. Despite parents being at the middle school with warm cars to drive them over, they chose to stay together in solidarity and walk together from the middle school to the district office. It really was something to see. I don't think those kids will ever forget using their voices that day. Available to everyone here and watching is a study after study after study about those negative physical and emotional effects of mask wearing on our students. These studies are not only recognized by the majority of the United States, who is not requiring that kids wear masks in school all day, but by also multiple other countries. More and more health officials, doctors, health organizations are coming out every day against our children wearing masks in schools and the effectiveness of these masks. This fact, coupled with event after event around the country where thousands of people are gathered maskless, including very politicians who themselves implemented these mask mandates and celebrities who preach about the necessity of masks, helps form my opinion and stance on masks. The most recent example of this is the Super Bowl. As a parent, I am not okay with an event such as the Super Bowl taking place in a state that has a current mask mandate, and yet 70,000 people are gathered there maskless. Many in attendance were the very politicians and celebrities that tell the public masks are vital to our safety. But if they believed that, why weren't they wearing one? If the people making these decisions for us truly believed what they were telling us, there would be a mask on their face, and yet there was not. These politicians and celebrities show us their own hypocritical actions that masks are not about safety. I have to honestly wonder what goes through our young kids' mind when they see that on a Sunday and return to school on a Monday and are forced to wear a mask all day. It's not right and it's not fair to them. But yet here in Oregon, we're told it's about our safety. And yet this same person is forcing our kids to wear masks all day is the same person letting criminals out of jail, which is not good for our kids' safety. It's the same person that has blocked life-saving treatments, which is not good for our kids' safety. She's largely responsible for our hospital bed shortage. That's not good for our kids' safety. And she's responsible for Oregon education system teaching racism in our schools. And that is not about our kids' safety. So forgive me if I choose not to rely on this same person to be making the best health and safety concerns or safety policies for our kids. I won't ever apologize for seeing what is right in front of me and standing up for our kids, ever. That concludes my official statement on that event. Thank you to our district staff and teachers who were put in the worst position of having to be mask police over educators, for your patience and for hanging in there. I look forward to the day when masks are no longer part of this conversation and we can all get back to focusing on what we love, which is just educating the kids. I also look forward to coming back next month and getting back to the real business of our district, which is our students' education and well-being. In other short news, I have made an inquiry to the district and Sherwood Police about hosting an educational community event to educate both parents and students about new drugs that we're seeing on the market and in our community. Also heard a few concerns from students over their original prom venue being canceled and their desire to have a real prom that they so truly deserve. Please know that your concerns have been heard and this information has been passed along to the district. I know the district wants you to have the amazing prom that you deserve. With that, I've taken more than enough time, so I will conclude my report as a whole. Thank you.
Director Hawkins. Well, I'm not sure how to follow that, but in other news, I had the pleasure of attending the annual Sip and Spell a few weeks ago. I know there are so many people who are not able to attend that event. Unfortunately, and fortunately, we are always sold out and there's always people who would like to come and be a new face and they don't get to come. So for many of you who may not know what that is, it's basically an adult spelling bee. We've had many, many people in the district involved in it over the years as guests of ours, as spellers, judges, moderators. But it is an event hosted by the Sherwood Education Foundation. And I wanted to make that distinction just because it did take a little bit of negative heat. And I think for people who are reading online, they didn't understand that distinction. But the Sherwood Education Foundation is a group of parents from this community who come together and work to fundraise money that then is granted back to teachers in the school district. So it is entirely separate from the school district itself. And in fact, this year, we didn't have a single administrator in attendance at that event, which we were sad to not get to have any of you guys there. And we understand the nature of how things are this year. But what I really wanted to celebrate is we raised $120,000. So that's a lot of money. In the past, we thought we had blown it away and we'd raised $80,000, but we raised $40,000 more than that. And that is a lot of money. And we could not have done that without support from the community, from businesses that showed up and donated, from people who could not attend, but still were gracious enough to write checks. And what I'm most excited about is only a couple months from now, we will turn around and write checks back to many, many teachers in this district who write those grants. So we don't really retain any of the money. We turn around the same year and we grant it all back to the community. In fact, many things that we saw tonight on the STEM presentation are things that I know we have funded, but I've never seen used with students. So for me, it was actually really fascinating to see these robots and bins of things that I've read about but never seen. So although that's entirely separate from my role here on the board, I'm really proud of that event. I'm proud that I attended. I'm proud that I was able to help put it on. But I want to make that distinction so that it's very clear to people. And it's an awesome event. So if any of you guys are able to attend in the future, I would highly encourage you to do that. That's it.
Thank you. And that's a good reminder. I had the good fortune of winning a couple things online, and that was, I wasn't able to attend. It was super fun. I won and knew some of the people bidding against me, so I was able to call them and tell them to quit bidding against me. That's not why I won. But it was pretty fun. You could actually see who was bidding you up. It's like, okay, stop that. But yes, it was all for the kids, and I got some cool stuff I'm excited about. And thank you for all that you do. I mean, this Sherwood Education Foundation has grown so much. I mean, my gosh, you know, way back when it started, I mean, we were grateful to raise $10,000, and that was a lot of hard work and a lot of calls. So thank you for that. And I also want to acknowledge the staff appreciation. What an amazing week. I got to see the picture. I mean, Hawksview rocked it. Whoever came up with the farmer's market idea, I don't know what happened at the other school, but what a fabulous thing for staff. Just unreal and so clever. So again, thank you so much to everyone in the district. And I sincerely hope that on Thursday night, you all unplug and unwind and have a 4-day weekend. You have more than earned it and deserve it. So thank you. And that will conclude the board reports. And it looks like we do not have anyone from SEA. So Ms. Fiken, OSEA, are you, the podium is yours.
Good evening, Chair Hecker, Board of Directors. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patina Fiken, and I am now the co-president for OSEA, which is our classified staff. So on behalf of classified staff, we just want to thank the Board of Directors and district leadership for approving the care and retention package. Classified staff have really had quite the added workload and stressors this year with the pandemic and just everything. While all components of the care and retention package are appreciated, right now the wellness days are just really high up there, and we just can't express our gratitude enough. These additional days are going to give our staff the opportunity to rest and recover and just kind of get that little bit of extra go to make it through the end of the year. So we just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is where we're moving along on the agenda, and this is kind of another area that we're learning because we've had some changes to our public comment process. So what that's going to look like as we move into public comment, the part of it hasn't changed, that really this is an opportunity for the board to be listeners. This isn't a discussion, this isn't a debate. So one of the changes that we've made is that the public comment portion that we start with, we want to make sure that the student voice was heard first, and then agenda items. So tonight, I think we have some students that will talk. We will kind of switch off. This is new as well, in person, then an online comment if there is one. There are no items pertinent to the agenda. Apparently no one had anything to say about board policy updates or the calendar. So we're covered there. So it's going to be students, and then we'll go ahead with the business of the district and then return back to public comments. So I think for the most part that covers it. You know, this is just an opportunity again to hear the student voice first. So we will start there. And I would invite, it looks like Lexi Lumley to the podium. And there is a 3-minute time limit. I think everybody's pretty aware of that. And so we'll stick to that. So the podium is yours.
I'm Lexi Lumley, and I'm here to talk about my school ridges and the kids eat on the floor. So I've been walking because we eat in the hallways most of the week. And when I walk past it heading to recess, sometimes I'll see our janitor cleaning it. But unlike when they clean the tables, I don't see any wet marks. And one time I was walking by and I had really non-friction shoes. So I decided to see if it was wet, and it wasn't. So, and there is 764 bacteria per square inch in your normal household. And imagine floors that I could visually see the dirt on the floor. So imagine that plus dirt being added at the end of the day. Then this is just in your house. So in a school with over 700 students. And like I said, over 700 students eat on the ground every single day. And the younger kids, like kindergartners, they don't know how dirty the floor is. So if a piece of food gets dropped on the floor, they are much more messy eaters than the older kids. They will most likely just pick it up and eat it. And they just, if it falls out, they'll eat it. And I'd also like to quickly address the fact that the kindergarten and preschool kids aren't allowed to take their masks off when they're there because they don't know how to social distance. So they're not allowed to take their masks off at recess. So that's my speech.
Thank you. Ms. Andre, do we have additional online student comments or? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I need just a moment to load the timer.
Yeah, okay.
So just for clarity, we're reading all student comments, whether they're agenda items or not. Okay. Dee Dee in Sherwood says, unmask our kids, they deserve choices. Audrey in Sherwood, it's, hello, I am a student at Sherwood and submitted my response for only one reason, change. Every day I get taught to stand up for what I believe in. I get taught about my rights and many other things. But then I stand up for what I believe in and I get called to the office where I am told not to question these rules. My admin compared this mask mandate to the no shirt, no shoes, no service rule. Walking in with no shirt to a restaurant is equal to your nose showing at school then? I don't believe that, but if I even suggest I don't, I get a huge target on my back and start failing classes because I am in the office too much. They are taking good kids and making them bad because they don't want to wear a mask. When there's kids destroying our school and bullying kids and many worse things. I don't know how to put into words how hard it is to get up every morning and go back there. I feel controlled and unloved. I am taught to only follow what is told to me, and that choice is wrong in this scenario. I get made fun of by not only kids that I don't know, but also teachers. The same teachers I would have loved. It started out as a mask, but now evolved into mental illness. And it's not just me. Everyone expressed it differently, some hiding it completely, but it's still there. Help the students, let us speak. Raleigh and Sherwood. These mandates need to end. I have seen division amongst peers in my school that would otherwise would never have happened. It makes me really sad to see this happening. Jocelyn and Sherwood. I'm in 3rd grade. I can't breathe in school when wearing a mask, and I want the schools to make masks optional in school. That way, kids can wear masks if their parents still need them to wear masks in school. But I'm healthy and would like to take my mask off so I breathe better. I would also like to see my teacher's face. Danae and Sherwood. Why is it that students do not have to choose to wear a choice to wear a mask? There is much research done that says that surgical masks should be replaced after 4 hours. This is because bacteria gets caught inside the masks and makes us even more sick. They also cause major headaches to some. Why do we, the students, have to put our health at risk for some other immune compromised person when they can wear their mask and protect themselves? Aubrey and Sherwood. Masks make it hard to breathe, especially during PE, and the gym is hot enough as it is without a mask to trap in your sweat. Masks should be optional for students in school. And that is the conclusion of student comment.
Thank you, Ms. Hendrick. Okay, so we will move on then to information and discussion, and then we'll circle back around for public comment. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Cordy.
Okay, thank you. While the team is going up to the podium, I will go ahead and just set the stage a little bit for this information and discussion item. So we have been sharing with you for in different ways for several months that we would be coming to you to share the next iteration, just slightly adjusted from winter of 2020 of the strategic plan. And so tonight we are excited to do that and to share that really great work with you. For our newest board members, this will be new information. For other board members, this will look very familiar because I just want to remind us all that let's go back a little bit further in our thinking here. When we first made the transition from district goals to a strategic plan several years ago, we had an outside facilitator come in and led a very extensive stakeholder engagement process. Lots of input, students, staff, administrators, community members, parents, community leaders. And that strategic plan, it was very important to us, as it still is, for the strategic plan to be a living, iterative document. And so not something that's going to be in a white binder on all of our shelves, but something that really guides the work that we do, that guides how our budget is developed. Our budget should reflect the priorities of the district. The priorities of the district should be reflected in the strategic plan. Administrator goals ideally are linked to elements of the strategic plan. Department goals are as well. So it should be a continuous process where the work is all supporting the elements within the strategic plan. A few years later, we knew that we needed to revisit. We brought the facilitator back in and went through round 2. And that actually happened during the winter of 2019 right into the beginning of the year of 2020. And that was a process that you've heard us refer to multiple different times. We met over the course of many weeks, again, with students, parents, staff members, administrators, community members, and engaged in that conversation that was also coupled closely with priorities for the student investment account, because it would make no sense to have priorities in the strategic plan that were different from goals within the student investment account. And so those became very closely coupled together, which we believe is exactly how it should be. So then 2020 happened. March of 2020 happened and everything since then. And truly, it was during the last year and a half or so, the strategic plan, if only we could be strategic, right? We were working so diligently on comprehensive distance learning models and all of those pieces that the strategic plan really took a back burner. And we're excited now to have refreshed it based on the work done that winter and share those elements with you. What you're going to learn about tonight from our team members is you'll see a slide deck that is very, very informal. There's nothing fancy to it. It is the work that is behind each of the major goals. And you'll see strike throughs, and we kept those in there so that we could really share with you and others, the areas where we pared down the intentions within various goals because we know how staff are exhausted right now. And so we have very purposefully gone through and figured out ways where we could to lessen the scope, if you will, of what would be happening within some of the key goals and strategies. So when you see strike throughs, that's what that's about. It's just left there to kind of show these are the things that we had originally intended, and we're just going to wait on those. So we want to answer your questions as we move on. And again, we're just really excited to share the work that that was contributed to by so many people in our district and our community. And so with that, I'll hand things over to Mr. Emmert to start with.
Good evening, Superintendent Cordy, Board Chair Hecker, Board of Directors, and Ella. So the first goal in our strategic plan is to recruit, retain, develop, and support highly qualified employees. This goal has changed somewhat over the year. Our primary areas of focus really were around equity before, and we've moved a lot of that work down under the equity goal. And then after, you may remember I shared a staff survey with you in December from our SEA staff members, and it really caused us to step back and rethink what this goal needed to be about. And it really needed to become much more about retention, retaining those staff members we have who are making a positive difference, a positive impact with our kids every single day, and then finding more creative ways maybe to recruit, knowing that right now the workforce, it just is much smaller than it has been in the past. We also have had a recent survey from OSCA, and it was exciting to see that even though we're still digesting much of that information, exciting to see that we've addressed some of those items within that care and retention package. And then there are also some items that we still want to make sure that we're paying attention to. So in terms of strategies, I shared those with you already. They really are around the care and retention package, and then also focusing on prioritizing pulling in student teachers, because that really is oftentimes our next workforce. So finding ways to really invest in people who are student teaching and growing them within our district through that experience. We're going to measure this goal in a number of ways. One is, as we have in the past, we'll use past and future staff retention data to measure retention. We'll continue to conduct exit interviews to measure staff satisfaction and to seek areas for improvement. We will conduct a survey with SEA and OSCA at the end of the year to measure how much these changes that we've created this year have made a difference. Our hope is that they really truly have made a difference for our staff. And then we'll continue, as I said, to pay attention to what we have in this care and retention package. Many of those things will be back on the table, I think, this spring for bargaining. Any questions on goal one?
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Cordy, Board of Directors. Before we talk about the next four goals, they're all related a little bit to the SIA plan, the Student Investment Account, and Measure 98, otherwise known as the High School Success Act that Dr. Cordy referred to. And I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about state funding for schools. We've received quite a bit of additional funding in the last 4 or 5 years, but it hasn't come in the form of the state school fund where we can do whatever we want with it. It's come in the form of 2 major acts. One's the Student Investment Account, which was part of the Student Success Act, passed by the legislature a few years back. The other is Measure 98, which was the High School Success Act, and that gives us $800 per high school student to focus on a couple of different things. And so while we've had increases in funding, it has had some important things tied to it. So I'll talk more with you next month about the Student Investment Account, and we'll bring you up to speed on that because it's a pretty major piece of legislation that's worth some time in and of itself. But in short, we were originally allocated about $3.9 million to Sherwood out of that account, which is a significant amount of money for a district our size. However, the night that the board approved the plan in 2020, the next day schools actually closed. tax revenues fell and we ended up getting far less money, and we've had some of that recover in the last couple of years. But what's important to note, because you'll see it in our next couple of goals, is that funding had two main uses that we could use it on. One was to increase academic achievement while focusing on reducing historical disparities in achievement. The second use we could use it for was to meet mental health needs, and you'll see that reflected in the next couple of goals that come out. Measure 98 was the High School Success Act. That gives us about $1.3 million per year out of that grant. That's again based on enrollment of $800 per high school student. And that is focused around improving high school graduation rates, expanding CTE programs, and increasing college credit opportunities. Three things Sherwood was already strong in, and this has only made us stronger. So when you see the other thing to note about both of these acts is they both have an equity component around decreasing disparities in achievement among different groups. And those are things required by the law. And so when you hear that little bit that I've shared with you, I think you'll see this reflected in our plans at for each of the goals. The other thing I wanted to talk briefly about was that the Student Success Act had three major goals. One was to develop a multi-tiered system of support. Our board members who were here last year learned quite a bit about this, but we presented on it in May. But a multi-tiered system of support is a way of structuring schools so that you're meeting kids where they need, and have tiered interventions for kids, universal support for kids. We'll talk more about that when we talk about the SIA plan, but you'll see that reflected in our plans as well. I think what's worth knowing here is it's a plan that's really strongly backed by research. It's most districts around either have one or are working on one, and it tends to be really good outcomes for students, and you'll see that reflected in our plan. So more about that later, but I wanted some context because I think it'll make the goals make more sense. So on that, I'll turn it over to Marlene Carroll, who will talk about goal number 2.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy, Board Chair Hecker, and board members. So as Gary mentioned, goal number 2 is really focused on MTSS. And during the SIA process, we identified using MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support, as our chief strategy to really improve student achievement for all while eliminating disparities. We're really in the infancy of this work. But for this year, we're focused on developing and implementing some foundational components of a multi-tiered system of support. As kind of a reminder and to go a little deeper, the MTSS system is really an educational framework, and it provides really high quality research-based instruction and intervention for students. The goal is to target individual learners' academic, behavior, and social emotional needs, and to do this in a more systematic approach. As previously mentioned, there were a lot of challenges that came up throughout the pandemic and reopening schools, and we really had to shift some of our activities planned for this year. And so this year, we're going to focus on the implementation of effective CLT practices, and that includes identifying essential standards. And an essential standard is teachers speak for what is it that we expect our students to learn. Teachers use a variety of resources to identify essential standards, including adopted state standards and adopted school materials. Another practice we will implement is continued professional learning on developing learning targets. Once a CLT determines the essential standard, they create a student-friendly learning target. They determine what proficiency will look like in their classroom, and they decide what assessments will be used to measure mastery of the learning target. We will also structure CLT time that is focused on using student level data. So this might look like a grade level team at perhaps elementary, or a content level team at secondary, or maybe even a discipline specific team. And they decide what prerequisite skills a student needs to master the learning. And what they will do when a student has already learned the materials. So we also know that this work takes a lot of collaboration. We want all of our students to experience the same learning. And so we've created opportunities for collaboration by minimizing some of the professional development that was happening during CLTs. And we also know that some of our teams may need additional time. And so we're working with teams right now to figure out what support they need and if we can offer them additional sub time out or maybe some time in the summer where they can have the support of the teaching and learning department and do that coaching and work together. Another key MTSS activity that we are addressing is dedicated to data-driven tier 2 intervention time. And specifically at the high school, and I'm so excited about this, we are calling this time Flex. Over the next week, our high school staff will be implementing phase 1 of Flex, and our high school students will start experiencing it next Thursday. Flex time is time built into the student's master schedule to provide opportunities to get both academic and potentially social emotional support during the school day. This support could be subject specific, like a study hall offered by an Algebra 1 teacher where students get to go and ask their questions to their teacher of choice. It could also be a targeted intervention where a teacher could ask a group of students to come in who missed a certain skill and they could reteach that skill to them. And it doesn't take place before or after school. It takes place during the school day. It also could be an enrichment opportunity. So students who want to participate in clubs can go during this time and participate in clubs. They can create clubs and host those clubs during this time. And the best part of it, like I already mentioned, is it really is an opportunity that happens during the school day. And so barriers like transportation or jobs or extracurricular activities just no longer get in the way from students receiving the enrichment and intervention they need. There's also an opportunity for school-wide enrichment, and that could look like a field trip or a guest speaker coming in, or maybe there's a presentation that students want to put on, and that can be hosted during that time. As we move into trimester 3, our teachers and CLTs may have different iterations of what this looks like, and they're going to be practicing creating these groups, hosting these groups, and really finding what works for them. And we're really excited about that. It is also our hope to offer a form of Flex at the middle school next year. And we're really lucky that the high school has been so gracious to pilot this work this year. In addition, one of our top priorities as we continue to implement MTSS is to make decisions using data disaggregated by groups, as this data may reveal patterns that could be masked by the whole group data. And this important priority around MTSS work and the data will really be discussed in Goal 5. As mentioned before, you'll see that there are a couple or many pieces of work to come around MTSS that we have decided to hold off for this year, but we're really excited to do the work that we're doing now and get started on that work in years to come. And now I'm also excited to introduce Dr. Fritz, who will talk about Goal 3.
Yes.
Questions?
Yes, I'm just
Sorry.
very excited about this Flex concept. Is that a student-driven like decision-making? So maybe there's a club going on and a school-wide enrichment and a teacher's asked them to come in and get help, or they know that maybe I'm a few pages behind on my English book, Sam. So maybe I need a little bit of help. So but that student can kind of go and try and figure out where is it that I need help and how to access that help at any given point in time and during that flex time?
Yes, and so we are piloting a new part of Synergy for students, and it's called Flex. And students they can choose, they get to see all the different offerings. They can pull it up on their phone in their student view account or whatever device. And they can choose what they want. And at the same time, teachers can default. And so if a teacher knows that they really need to meet with that student to go over something before a test or before a midterm or a final, then they can default that student and the student will see, oh, Mr. Mitchell defaulted me, I better go see him. And so it can work like that.
That's really fantastic. I'm so excited to hear about this and hope that we get a chance to hear at a future meeting about how that's going. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Fritz.
Good evening, Chair Hecker, Board of Directors, and Superintendent Dr. Cordy. I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the status of the district strategies related to Goal 3, improve mental health and social emotional support. Suicide prevention trainings, which are required under state law, Addie's Act. We've talked about that in past board meetings. That began this past August, and we have now completed training with all district staff. Additionally, while we began the year with several counseling positions unfilled, at this point, we now, yay, finally have a fully staffed counseling team in the district, which is very exciting. Also using SIA funds, a district-wide behavior mental health coordinator and 2 full-time mental health specialists were hired and began last August. These specialists have been working directly with school teams as well as individual students and their families to address mental health as well as social emotional needs, and that's at the middle school and the high school. We also now have green rooms, sometimes referred to kindly as wellness rooms in the district. And that's amazing opportunity because we have those at all of our elementary schools as well as the middle school. There's also currently conversations going on about how can we implement that at the high school, perhaps starting in the fall. But let me give you an example of that. That is a place where students that may not have the skills to be successful yet in school can get that support. So we have currently second graders in our district that have yet to experience a normal school year. And so we have these second graders that have come in and they just don't even understand what's expected about how do you line up or why do I have to sit at a desk for this extended period of time? Rather than taking a disciplinary approach, we have those wellness rooms at each of our elementary schools, and those are fully staffed with an assistant that helps support whatever those skills are. And students can go in either individually or as a small group to be taught what are those expected skills and behaviors. Likewise, students that may have emotional or behavior regulation going on, that's a setting where they are actually taught kind of coping mechanisms so that they can get themselves regrouped and get back into class. It has been widely successful with students at elementary and middle, which is why we're having conversations about rolling that up to our high school. Additionally, there's been all this talk about MTSS. So of course, we're also talking about that with behavior. We now have a separate work group focusing on MTSS-B. There's all these acronyms, but what we came to realize was that we couldn't just have one multi-tiered system of support. We really needed to give intentional thinking around what behavior and mental health look like. So we broke that out into a separate work group. And that behavior and mental health support work group now has developed a timeline for a staged rollout over the next 3+ years. The more work we did around this, we realized how many pieces there were, and we really needed to slow that work down for 2 reasons primarily. One is there are no written tiered procedures that have been developed yet. As this year, our focus really is on tier 1, making sure we have all of those basic supports for all students, and getting into auditing the processes and procedures that we have in the district. We have so many great things happening for kids, but we want to build a system and be able to understand exactly what it is that works best for kids and roll that out so it's available to all students across the district. Additionally, one of the other reasons we chose to slow down on this was that state SEL or social emotional learning standards are coming. We don't know what they are yet, and they are not set to be released by ODE until late summer of 2023. I keep hearing September 2023, possibly. And we realized it did not make sense to put together all of this work and roll out a plan related to that, and then somehow realize, oops, those aren't the standards that we're being directed by the Department of Education to be focusing on. So we've really tried to slow this down a bit and be more intentional in our thinking. The areas that we're also, as you see, there's lots of strikeouts there. It's not that we're forgetting about those things, but we're really trying to be intentional in our planning and implementation of these things. So areas that we're holding off on moving forward with for this year, but are part of the long-term NTSS-B plan, are providing on-site wraparound supports, mental health, behavior, attendance, academic, and then district-wide implementation of restorative justice practices in grades K through 12. So stay tuned for that part later on. And with that, I want to introduce Tamara Glavin, who is our, oh, hang on, Tamara.
Sorry, I have questions. I apologize for not doing
That's
these to
okay.
you in advance. I do have a question about, and perhaps the answer is we now have a full team and so we're able to tend to this, but my question is really around how we're supporting families who spent the first, maybe 2 years or first year or year and a half of their child's education kind of learning from home. And that's a kind of a critical point at identifying either learning disabilities or ADHD or, a variety of things where kids end up needing a 504, they need an IEP, or they need special supports to deal with learning that isn't on track. How are we tending to that catch-up need in addition to the ongoing support to kids who may already have plans in place, but those that may have not had the opportunity to be diagnosed yet and need support through that process?
Yeah, first I want to point out that even throughout the pandemic, when we were on CDL, we were still catching those kids. We were assessing them moving forward, whether that was a 504 plan or whether that was actual identification of a student need under IDEA and then developing an IEP. What I would say is, we've been fully staffed in special education, so that's a piece that's constantly happening. There has been more of a focus around training and understanding the 504 process. That's actually our counselors, not the special education team. So there's been quite a bit of training and support around that process this year. And then, of course, making sure that every school in the district is fully staffed with counselors so that they're able to address those needs when they do come up. There was mention earlier about the CLT or the collaborative learning teams. That's also a big piece of this because that's on those Wednesday early releases when teachers are talking about students and student data. It's not just academic, it's also these other components related to behavior and social emotional learning. And so when we identify a student may have some kind of deficit area or need for support, then that's when during their CLTs, they're bringing in their counselor, their special education team, and so on and so forth, so that we can move forward with the appropriate support actions. Yeah. Was there another question?
Yeah. So before I did this, I used to be a counselor. And when I read through this, I was kind of okay reading all the little strikeouts. But then, of course, I got to this section and it made me concerned for our students to see the things that are having to be put on the back burner. I know that we have to do that with some things, but it does concern me because I think that their mental health needs are so great and are really needing to be attended to. So when we say these are on our long-term plan, what's that timeframe look like? Like, when are we circling back to these really important things?
Thank you. That's a great question. So as I mentioned, what we really honed in on is a 3-year plan. So if you've heard anything mentioned about a Gantt chart, I think it's about 12 pages long. But what we realized is that we need to be really intentional with our planning. It's not just posting a job and bringing somebody on board. We have to make sure we know what those learning targets are and how we're putting those supports in place. And so right now we're focusing on tier 1, the basic supports for all students, such as wellness rooms, such as those mental health specialists I mentioned. And then making sure that we get the standards as we move forward and making sure that we complete an audit of the practices that are in the district so that we can then add these other pieces over the coming 3 years. I'd love to add them magically tomorrow, but that wouldn't, that wouldn't be best if we're not methodical about how we're doing that. Any other? All right. And with that, then I'm going to introduce Tamara Glavin, who will be talking to us about Goal 4. Tamara is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Good evening, Chair Hecker, Superintendent Cordy, and Board of Directors. This evening, I get the privilege of discussing Goal 4 with you today. I'm going to go measurement and then strategy. That's just the way that my brain works. But first, our first measurement is gather baseline perception data from Sherwood School District students, families, and staff by creating and conducting a survey at the beginning and the end of the school year. This is in order to hear from multiple stakeholders across our district. These surveys will help us guide and make decisions and changes that positively impact our students, families, and staff. Next, we have conduct phase 2 of our equity audit and empathy interviews. As you know, phase 1 was conducted last spring. And a part of our goal is to conduct phase 2 that focuses on curriculum and instruction. And additionally, we have a goal to increase stakeholder engagement by 20% in our next phase. Our next measurement, provide equity and inclusivity professional development opportunities to all district staff over the course of the year. We've already started engaging in our equity professional development with some of our faculty. One aspect we're focused on is changing our timing so that way all of our staff can engage in that opportunity if they that they have access to engage in those professional development learning times. Additionally, we are continuously seeking feedback. So at the end of our professional development, we send out surveys requesting that staff tell us what went well and making sure that the feedback comes to us so that way we can create relevant and timely and meaningful professional development opportunities. Next, we are transitioning our Equity Visioning Committee, which was established last year to provide guidance surrounding phase 1 of our equity audit and empathy interviews. We're transitioning that into our Equity Advisory Committee, utilizing the requirements listed in Senate Bill 732. We are a bit ahead of time in that time frame that's referenced in the bill, but we can then use that to lay a strong foundation for future work. Next, we have create and define roles of the equity lead positions at every Sherwood School District building. This year, we established the lead positions, and every building has a lead position. These positions are held by current staff members who are taking on this additional role in addition to their normal teaching or other roles that they have within the district. This role in particular, the leads are especially important because they help align our equity work district-wide and also help us understand the needs of the individual buildings. So they bring feedback and understanding from the staff members that they have talked to within their buildings. So that way we can all be on the same page and have a good understanding moving forward. Next, we have reduced the demographic gap between staff and students by 1% each year. The result will be that on the ODE district report card, staff demographics will more closely mirror student demographics. We are seeking to diversify our faculty and staff so that our staff will mirror student demographics, but this does not mean that we lower our standards in any way. We are always seeking highly qualified staff. Instead, this means that we utilize strategies and engage in the various activities to recruit and retain highly qualified staff with diverse backgrounds. Our next measurement is recruit a minimum of 2 students or classified staff into the Diverse Educator Pathway Program each year, including this school year. Our Diverse Educator Pathway Program began 4 years ago in partnership with Northwest Regional ESD, Hillsborough, Forest Grove, and Tiger Tualatin school districts. This partnership and this work came out of a need to recruit diverse staff to match district demographics. This program offers support to those seeking to become educators who are either, the participants are either future educators of color, bilingual, or first-generation college students. We help them navigate the typical college experience, as in like navigating financial aid. We set them up with mentors from our district. We also provide summer internships for their continued learning, and we offer guidance and support throughout the year. Over the years, we made great strides in improving our advertising for this program. And because of these efforts, we currently have 7 participants, 1 community member, 3 staff members, and 3 former students. This year, a team of us are working together to recruit more students, staff, and community members to engage in this program, while also continuing to support those that we currently have. Our next measurement is hire a minimum of 1 additional multilingual, multicultural, dual language immersion teachers for the DLI program at Hawksview. This program began 2 years ago. Initially, the program started as a kindergarten class and has grown into 1 kindergarten class and 1 first grade class. Next year, we'll have 1 kindergarten, 1 first grade, and expand to have 1 second grade class. This growth will carry on each year, so that way students can continue in the program. Next, I'll be talking about the strategies. Our strategies first provide professional development opportunities for staff on anti-bias, anti-racist, culturally responsive practices. This is directly tied to our 3rd measure. The strategy focuses on providing opportunities for all staff, no matter their role, to engage in those professional development opportunities. Continuing with our equity audit and empathy interviews to implement those changes based on the findings. We are going to begin phase 2 very soon, and we'll utilize those findings just as we did with phase 1 to implement changes to our practices. Next, we have engaged stakeholders, including continuing the work of the visioning committee. This strategy relates to the 1st and 4th measurement. We want to continue engaging our community in a variety of ways, and part of that is engaging our equity committee. They are key in us hearing from our stakeholders in different groups, along with providing opportunities for feedback via those perception surveys. Next, we have developed multiple resources for staff support, continued learning and engagement with students, families, and other stakeholders. We know that learning can be done in formal settings, but we also know that it can be done outside of those formal environments. Part of this is to foster continued learning for staff outside of all of that work, and we will develop and collect resources to support staff's continued learning. Some of this looks like creating toolkits or FAQs, and then also other resources that might be recommended, like videos or articles or books. Next, we have establish an understanding of, as well as garner interest for, affinity spaces. And you'll see a strike through under resulting in the creation and implementation of affinity groups. This is because we want to make sure that as a district, we understand what affinity spaces are utilized for. And we also want to make sure that our staff has the ability to engage in these spaces in ways that are beneficial to them. So if they have too much on their plates right now, engaging in a voluntary affinity space or leading an affinity space might not be the best thing to add to their plates. So we're not eliminating affinity spaces. Instead, we're taking our time to ensure that they are useful. Next, ensure that all curricula recommended for adoption fully aligns with ODE's equity initiatives and lens as documented by ODE's adoption criteria, audit, and racial justice tool. These are resources that we use when looking at various instructional materials. Often we use the tools to help consider things that we bring into the classroom. Some of it is books, some of it's other materials, but utilizing these resources helps us make sure that all of our materials are aligned with ODE's standards and relevant to our staff or to our students. Next, we have hiring strategies, and these are strategies that I will collaborate with our human resources department to work through and utilize. First, we have refine our district screening and hiring process and guides and rubrics to reduce bias. A significant part of fostering a culture of equity and inclusivity district-wide begins with our hiring process. We'll be examining hiring practices and guides and rubrics utilized by other districts, then developing our own to reduce bias in our hiring practices. We will also be improving and updating and implementing our current equity lens that was crafted in 2017. We'll be engaging in a process, including multiple stakeholders, to update the lens to make sure that it is practical, helpful, and fits our school communities. Next, we have train administrators in anti-bias training and hiring diverse staff. Our administrators have been engaging in a variety of professional development sessions related to diversity, equity, and inclusion already. In continuing with these trainings, the HR department and I will collaborate on creating anti-bias training focused on hiring practices for our administrators. These trainings may relate to information surrounding bias during the resume reviewing process, the interview process, or even examining and adjusting common language in job descriptions. Next, we have a part of recruiting diverse instructional assistants include the diverse educator pathway in marketing. We're very proud of this program and we want our future employees to know of it. So to show what a fantastic program this is, we will utilize our partnership with Northwest Regional ESD to market our district and this program that we offer. Next, we have a safe and welcoming environment. So again, working to establish affinity spaces, supporting a culture and climate that welcomes and ensures and celebrates inclusivity and diverse experiences. A lot of our work has been focused on students and families, as it should be, but we also need to remember that our staff is here as well. So the strategy focuses on making sure that we create a culture and climate to uplift our staff and celebrate our staff. Next, we have strategically recruit diverse faculty and staff. Again, we're wanting to make sure that we recruit high quality staff, but also making sure that staff come with diverse backgrounds so that way they closely mirror our student demographics. And we have create a safe and welcoming environment with activities and procedures to retain existing staff. Some of those activities have been mentioned, but other activities include learning spaces like book clubs or lunch and learns, continuing district professional development, and establishing and engaging in mentorship programs. And lastly, we have examine existing evaluation and consider adding components related to equity. Many districts are implementing or considering implementing components related to equity for their teacher evaluations and staff evaluations. For example, some districts have implemented equity and inclusion focused rubrics that utilize they utilize during teacher evaluations. Some of the aspects look like classroom environment, rigor and expectations in curriculum and instruction. While we consider adding these components like a rubric, we will examine the evaluation process of neighboring districts and utilize an evaluation system that best works for ours. Questions? Okay. Thank you. No. With that, I will hand it to Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Ms. Glavin. So goal 5 is really around providing a well-rounded and innovative education that's accessible to all kids. And it's really, this is where a lot of what you saw earlier in the elementary STEM presentation fits in. In fact, that's one of the things that's laid out here in this goal. The first one is around advanced course participation rates at the high school. And advanced courses are courses that are advanced placement courses, which are essentially college level courses, or dual credit courses for which kids actually earn college level credit. And we're looking at increasing our rates of kids who take those type of courses. And these are the numbers of kids who take one of those courses over the course of their high school. By the way, these numbers are really, really high relative to other high schools around. Getting that percentage of high school kids to take those advanced courses is really high. It's worth noting that when we look, this is one of our goals in Measure 98, our High School Success Act goals right out of our plan. And it's worth noting that there's very little disparity between racial or ethnic groups that have experienced historically academic disparities. The numbers are very close. Where we actually see our disparities in Sherwood is around students who are emerging bilinguals, students who are navigating disabilities or students in special education, and students navigating poverty. That's where we see our lower numbers. And when you look to the strategies for those things, for those areas, for those groups of students, when we looked, for example, at students with disabilities and students who are emerging bilinguals, we found that it's actually a schedule challenge for them. They have to take additional coursework. And a lot of those dual credit courses are 3-trimester courses. They're all year. And so there's actually a physical block in the schedule. It's a barrier that prevents them from being able to access those courses. And so what you're looking at is how do you change the schedule? How do you change how those services are delivered so that all kids can access those courses? And so those are some things we're working on. There's some fairly significant structural changes that need to take place, but that's what we're looking at in order to improve those numbers. Also, students navigating poverty. We still had some fees associated with some of those courses, and we've since found a way to eliminate fees so that there's no barrier financially to kids. We've always waived the fees for kids who needed them, but for some kids, they see a dollar sign on the registration sheet and they just can't take the course, they think. And so we've been able to eliminate those fees. So we're trying to eliminate barriers to allow kids to get there. And then it's just intentionally promoting these courses to kids who we know can do it, and then providing them support to get there. So that's what the first goal is about, or the first measurement about, is about increasing the kids who have the opportunity to take advanced coursework. The second one, you saw a little bit tonight, it's around articulating a K-12 STEM program. So this is this comes from a couple different processes. One, our student investment account plan, and also part of as the bond process that Dr. Cordy referred to earlier, we had transformation visioning advisory committees, and they gave us a lot of input on how they wanted their schools to look when we made these changes. And when you combine the feedback from those two groups, really articulating a solid K-12 STEM program came out high on the list, and really connecting our STEM and CTE electives and electives in general on a path from the high school to the middle school to really make that 6 through 12 connection where kids can learn about what they're interested in middle school and then take those courses in a really advanced way in high school. And so really excited to see the elementary STEM program that those 4 teachers created. They've done an amazing job, and we're building that forward. And so that's really what this goal is all about. The other strategy is to just continue to build our dual language immersion program, which is off to a good start. We currently have grades K and 1 in that, and we'll start we'll start another kindergarten class next year, and our first class will move into 2nd grade. So that's really exciting and going quite well. We'll start opening registration for that very shortly. Any questions about goal 5? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Hecker, members of the board, Superintendent Cordy. You've heard the great things we're working on to support staff and to provide services to our students. Kind of the third leg of the stool is our operations. And so I get to talk to you about goal 6, which is to streamline operations to improve efficiency and deliver cost-effective infrastructure for students, staff, and families. And a little bit of context around this is for most school districts, we have personnel costs that reach above 80% of our total budget. So there's not a lot left to do to work on the buildings and to maintain kind of our infrastructure. And so what money we do have, we need to be kind of extra careful with. And we have, as a community, traditionally put money to the classrooms, even sometimes to the detriment of our buildings. And we've had quite a large backup in deferred maintenance, as you probably remember. Our last bond in 2016 allowed us to catch up on much of that, but not quite all of it. And so we really have to keep track of this for our students' education, because buildings with poor heat or leaky roofs, they're a distraction to kids. So we will continue to watch our deferred maintenance and to stay on top of the existing deferred maintenance that we didn't address in the 2016 bond, and keep track of the new deferred maintenance needs as they arise. We're going to prioritize those. We'll keep track of them through a system that we've developed so we can identify what's needed. And we will maximize the longevity of our school buildings by implementing those monitoring systems, establishing new maintenance protocols that we have not had the opportunity to do in the past, and then kind of being very strategic about planning our infrastructure investments. So what limited resources we have, we're going to be very careful as to how we use those, particularly for deferred maintenance. In addition, we're going to identify levels of equipment replacement priorities, because that's another area that we haven't always tended to as well as we would have hoped to. Equipment for cleaning our buildings and those kinds of things, they wear out, and we just need to be planful about how and when we'll replace those. On the technology side, our previous bond allowed us to have a 1-to-1 device to student ratio, and it's changed how we support students or how staff supports students. And it's become critical that all of our staff have an appropriate device to use, whether it's a teacher using an online app to demonstrate a math concept or an instructional aide working directly with a student on their reading assignment. They really need the right device to do that work. And so we'll be working to make sure that every staff that's working directly with students has those devices. Another area that drives a lot of calls to our school offices is transportation. And we believe that with improved communication from the transportation department directly to families that need the information, we will decrease the workload on our office building staff and our transportation department. And so while not directly a cost savings here, it does free up our offices to do other things that they need to. And we plan to do this by utilizing the parent portion of our bus routing software, which is called Ride 360. And that app will show where bus stops are, when the bus has arrived, and provide direct communication to parents related to their specific bus and route. For example, if a bus is running late, we can communicate directly to those parents that are affected by that, rather than sending a building-wide message that a bus is running late, which tended to cause a little bit of confusion, and we'd get calls to the office because people like myself don't always remember what bus our students are on. I've gotten better. I figured it out finally, but it took me a couple months. And then kind of our last key to running efficient buildings is really using the space that we have available. And we will monitor enrollment across the district to effectively allocate staff as school enrollments change. We use disaggregated enrollment data and work with the HR department to allocate staff based on that data as part of the budgeting process and throughout the year. And this is particularly important moving forward as we have kind of known housing developments, particularly on Brookman, that will be coming online over the next few years. So we will continue to monitor that. And with that, I'll open it up to questions for myself or any of my colleagues.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett. I have a question about goal number 5, and just maybe it's a question or maybe it's more of a statement that I think my hope is that as we work to make it clear that students can take an AP class without taking the exam, and I think that's really important, so students get an opportunity to experience what that looks like in the hopes that maybe later they'll actually take the exam. I am really interested in finding ways to enable students to, maximize dual credit opportunities in conjunction with AP courses, or do more so that students actually walk away after some of the timeline for making a decision about whether to take the exam or not happens really early in the year before they get really comfortable and find out, hey, I can do this. And then trying to find a way to help do more fee mitigation or make it easier for people to actually take them so that if they are successful on those exams, that they can take those credits with them. I appreciate this as a first step, but in the hopes that we can continue to really work to make that accessible, because I think the more positive experience folks have with AP classes, the more doable college becomes. Same is true for dual credit. And the more we can do on that, the better.
No question. I thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you all so much. And we really appreciate all the work. Amazing body of work, especially in such a busy time. So we'll go ahead and move on to our action items. Super exciting for tonight. OSBA policy updates. Mr. Emmert, the podium is yours.
The time you've all been waiting for. So the Oregon School Board Association submits drafts of policy updates to the district periodically throughout the year. These suggested or mandated updates represent changes in law that impact board policy or optional suggested language that the district can choose to adopt if applicable to our practices. When the policy updates come to us from OSBA, we carefully read through them and discuss any that we have questions about. District administration has made recommendations to add, delete, or revise the updates to policies in sections C, G, I, and J included in your board packet. Copies of all policies within these sections as recommended by OSBA and/or the district are included. Tonight, we bring them to the board for first read and review, and we'll bring them back in the March board meeting.
Thank you. We'll continue with the calendar.
So in December, in the December board meeting, the district presented proposed 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024 district calendar drafts to the board for first read and review. Tonight, these calendar drafts are presented to the board for second read and adoption.
Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the 2022, 2023, and the 2023, 2024 district calendars.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any-
Second.
Gotcha. Okay. Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have calendars for 2022, 23, and 23, 24, and thank you for that. We all appreciate you going that far out in advance for all the planning that people like to do. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, we will circle back now to the public comment that is not from students. So again, we'll have a 3-minute time frame, and we'll alternate between in person and online. So with that, I would welcome Dan Jamison to the podium. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. For the record, my name is Dan Jamison. I've been a resident in Sherwood for 17 years. And I have 3 very simple messages to share with you tonight. First, I want to publicly state my great appreciation, my admiration, my respect for Superintendent Dr. Cordy. This community will be well served to retain her as long as we are able. She has led this district with skill, with competence, and with success for the last 12 years. She has earned our appreciation. Secondly, I want to state what is obvious to most of us in this room tonight. The events last Tuesday at Sherwood High School mark a low point. This is the first time that I have felt shame for my community. The comments I heard on a video clip were not only sickening, they were probably slanderous. Yet finally, I want to take a larger perspective. Our kids are amazing, and they tend to rise to the expectations that you and I set for them. Years from now, as we reflect on the long journey of this pandemic, and knowing that you and I are all tired of wearing masks, the last few weeks of a mandate for masks will not matter all that much. However, the sacred trust this community holds for our schools and our district is a treasure. It's a fragile distinction that takes years to build through hard work, through sacrifice, and perseverance. Those adults who intentionally choose, whether they are from inside or outside this community, those who choose to inject divisiveness, those who seek political attention and short-term notoriety, jeopardize this treasure. to our great collective loss. They tear at the fabric of this community. All of your leaders, and I trust that you know strong leadership begins with listening. You are surrounded by a highly effective and successful district leadership team. I urge you to show wisdom by following their counsel and their guidance during these challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Andrake, I believe we'll be reading the next comment that was submitted electronically.
Yes, and just as a reminder, we do need to wait for the timer reset when we're switching back and forth. Corey and Sherwood, I want to first acknowledge that this has been a difficult 2 years for everyone. Many thanks are to be shared with our amazing community, its teachers, first responders, medical professionals, and more. The fluid nature of COVID has resulted in everyone making short-term decisions that sometimes work and other times fail. We need to have personal accountability for our actions in this trying time. I believe in the 2 years since COVID altered our daily lives, the admins of Sherwood School District should be questioned, evaluated, and resulting actions enforced. The most recent incident is the handling of the school district's response to protests by parents and students over the masking mandate. The protest had over 400 parents, children, and members of our community. We behaved respectfully and honored everyone's right to select masks or no masks. We protested at the high school, middle school, and district office. The video coverage from the event clearly shows the peaceful protest and the respect for everyone involved. Unfortunately, that is not how the admins characterized the events, nor is it how they elected to show up and participate as a member of our community and their positional authority. The email before the protest was designed to deter participation and the opportunity for free speech. Admins elected to paint participants into a corner to feel that they are either doing something wrong or that they will face punishment as a result of their actions. On the day of the protest, the admins showed up, but rather than showing up where the parents gathered and engaging the group assembled, they instead showed up arms crossed and ready for an altercation at the high school. Rather than coming out to the children and using this as a teaching moment, as done at the middle school, they rather elected to elevate the situation by preparing the staff and teachers to be ready for a war. The middle school admins came out and addressed the kids and recognized the life-changing experience they were all going through. At the high school, as seen on videos, the admins were seen arms crossed and ready for an altercation. After the protest, they again emailed the community. They inaccurately portrayed the situation and villainized the parents and children for sharing their voice for the first time in 2 years. Rather than recognizing that both sides have something to learn from the event, they made it clear that punishment is the result of opening your mouth and speaking up for yourself in Sherwood. Our kids deserve to be heard. They deserve respect from the admins, even if the admins don't agree with their views. All views are important. The actions from the admins of Sherwood School District need to be questioned, evaluated, and resulting actions enforced.
Okay, we'll go back to in person and I would welcome Mike Highland to the podium. The floor is yours.
Madam Chair, is it possible, just for the benefit of those that are testifying and just to ensure that there's everyone understands that people are hitting the timeline, is it possible to have the yeah.
Apologize, I thought I was screen sharing and apparently I'm not.
That is quite all right. It's a lot to handle, and thank you for doing it.
We'll just need to wait a second for the video to load.
Okay. Feel like I'm on a starting line here. Yeah. Okay, hi. First off, as a former president of the Sherwood Education Foundation, I want to thank Abby and the board of the SEF for that very successful event. It's grown, Sip and Spell has grown every time you've had it. And it offers an opportunity. The teacher grant program that it funds really gives an opportunity for our teachers to innovate. And so thank you very much for that. And thank the board. So this is an open letter to the Sherwood School District staff. This is what you mean to this community. Thank you for being there for my family when we needed you. Teaching the skills they need to make their way in the world. Thank you for learning new ways to teach in unprecedented times and under unprecedented challenges. Keeping our students, our families, and yourselves safe. Having the open flexibility to adjust to changing needs and conditions, and always keeping the priorities on our students. Helping our students not only when they are ready to learn, but when they are down, unfocused, and working to get them back on track. Thank you for making all students feel valued and important, and teaching the values of inclusion, equity, and diversity, a requirement for any free society. Making sure that no one is left behind in Sherwood. Thank you for being a shining asset in the community, a major reason people move here and stay here. Stay strong. Your work is valued and admired. Your work makes Sherwood a great place to live. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. And we'll go back to the electronic submission. And the Zephyr.
Just for the record, we had 2 comments submitted by the same individual, so I'm going to just read them cohesively as one. Christopher Kotsky, Sherwood. I am disappointed in the admin of the schools and elected officials on the SSD, most, not all. Here we are 2.5 years in fighting for basic American rights, the right to choose. Back in summer, the SSD heard tearful testimony of SHS and elementary students begging you not to mask them. Did you care? By the fight or lack thereof with Salem, you preferred your politics and fear to fight for our kids' right to have choice in the mask debacle. Now the science us nut jobs followed is proven right. The development of kids learning because of masking is at an all-time low. Depression and suicide due to the lack of basic rights is through the roof. Masking by all accounts, and most recently a Johns Hopkins study, show the masks are, well, useless. Blood is on your hands, not an inaccurate statement. The OHA is hell-bent on making Sherwood an example because of bitterness since being removed from the board. Us parents are done sitting around and playing nice. You think you can only care for one side of the aisle, be ready for a continued relentless fight from those in the city that really care. I am disgusted to hear that the only reason the SSD continues to fight along with Salem and the vengeful-led OHA is because of COVID cash. Where and how is this extra fund per child going? How is it being accounted for SSD? We need answers. My child's rights and free choice is worth more than your kids for COVID cash pandemic. Lastly, how about returning that cash kicker that is in the realm of $300 to $6K per student, depending on districts to the parents? That way we can pull our kids and place them in a school of our choice where masks are optional. And yes, they do exist. We have one of our children in a God-loving, free-to-choose learning place. Do like a LCS district and fight for our kids. Very displeased parent, Chris.
Okay, so I would welcome, sorry if I, Brian Yoshinaka to the podium. Sorry if I didn't say that properly. Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Director Cordy, Board of Directors, thank you for the time. I know we can joust online, but I appreciate the time to speak with all of you this evening. We've heard a lot over the last week about how outside parties disrupted last week's protests, and that seems to be true based on what we're seeing. But I haven't heard a lot of folks asking why they showed up. And the answer is pretty simple. We made it inviting for them to be here. We made it look like a place where they would be welcome. All they had to do was look at the posts in the Sherwood Community Info Group, posts on Open Oregon or Free Oregon, to see that this looked like friendly territory for them. So we shouldn't have been surprised that they showed up. They could look at the taunting of a former school board member leading up to the election, taunting that continued after the election and continues literally to this day. They could look at the rhetoric shared in previous school board meetings to see that this looked like a friendly, fertile place for them to bring their brand of protest. And the behavior that they exhibited last week shouldn't surprise us one bit. We know who they are. We know their rhetoric. We know their tactics. And we are literally embracing them on these lines. For us to claim that their behavior was surprising or shocking seems disingenuous. I will say, though, that I will give credit where it's due to the board member who posted online that these folks should not be invited back until they have apologized for their actions to our teachers. Thank you. I truly do appreciate that. But as a community member, I would like to see us go further. I would like to see us tell them if they are going to come and violate the policies of our district, they should not come. If they will encourage our students to violate the policies of this district, they should not come. These are the same policies every member of this board has sworn to uphold. You are leaders. Your voices matter in these. If you are involved, you can help us de-escalate these situations. The reason I think this is critically important is we have some really tough discussions coming up over the next several months. We have the sanitizing of American history in the classroom. We have LGBTQ inclusion. We have classroom transparency, book bans. All of these things are going to be really divisive, and it's going to involve the exact same people who are involved in this mask debate. I'm a pro-mask person. You can guess where I probably fall in all of these debates. That's what's scary, is it's the same people, the same energized, angry people who are going to be involved next time. I would love to see us come together as a community and see if we can't de-escalate these kinds of discussions. What happens next time if we don't do that? What happens if the Proud Boys show up like they did in Vancouver? Patriot Prayer shows up like they did in Vancouver? Will there be property damage next time? Will there be injuries next time? I think these are all things worth looking at. We can disagree, we can argue. My hope is that you, as a board, help us lead civil discussions to make sure that things don't get worse next time.
That's time.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll go back to the electronic submission. Ms. Andre?
Corinne and Sherwood. Masking our kids needs to end. It clearly has not stopped the spread. The protest at the high school was peaceful. I was there. Masked students were not blocked by unmasked students. They were blocked by the admin folks. There was a police presence that was never asked to get involved. Masked students that arrived after 8:30 were motioned to the side door where staff were allowing masked students in while preventing unmasked students to go in the main door. Unmasked students never bullied masked students, but I did witness masked students bullying unmasked students. The mass psychosis needs to end. We are truly witnessing how Hitler led his army against peaceful Jewish people.
Okay, then back to in-person. Lauren Halgren, you're welcome to go to the podium. The floor is yours.
Hello, members of the board and district staff. What a strange time we're living in. I am here to formally request that we end the COVID restrictions on the K-12 students, make masks optional, end social distancing, and end quarantine periods. But not just end the restrictions. I'm formally requesting that the board and the district fight back against the permanent rule that the Oregon Health Authority recently passed relating to K-12 schools, OAR 333-019. This rule was overwhelmingly rejected by the public during the hours and hours of public comment that were picked randomly through a lottery, but the OHA still passed their permanent rule. Immediately, the OHA said they would be transferring the decision to the local school districts on or before March 31st. But what they failed to mention was that there would still be excessive limitations on the schools and children if masks are lifted, since the RSSL is not being lifted. They also failed to mention that in Rule OAR 333-019, they have given themselves unprecedented powers to make rules and regulations as they see fit without oversight. The wording directly from the mask mandate part of the rule 33019-1015 says, the Oregon Health Authority has the authority to adopt rules to prescribe measures and methods for controlling reportable diseases, including COVID-19. This permanent authority they granted themselves literally says that it is for any reportable diseases, and they can prescribe any measures they see fit. There are no limitations. I am appealing to you not only as school administrators and board members, but citizens of Oregon. This is unacceptable and will lead to constant overreach and chaos in our schools. If we do not stand up to this, we will have to live with constant fear that our schools will be thrown under rules decided entirely by the bureaucracy of the OHA without oversight from our elected officials. I'm also asking that you reject permanent rule OAR 333-019-1030 that is a requirement for staff, teachers, and volunteers to be fully vaccinated. This never should have been forced upon our staff and families. And before I run out of time, I just want to say some things that my kids have gone through under the guise of just following the rules. They've been publicly called out and threatened to be taken out of leadership classes. Once this happens, they were told they would have to go in front of a panel of their peers to decide if they can continue in the class. Told by multiple teachers and staff members that they were killing people by not wearing their masks, literally telling the children that they are killing people by not wearing their masks correctly multiple times. Singled out for being a fifth person at a 4-person table, left to sit alone, other children left to sit alone and stare at them when they are the 4 people at the table. Not allowed to stand inside. If they go outside, they're not allowed back inside to go to the bathroom. Chased down the hallways, given nicknames by teachers. Witnessed a child have masks taped to their face that was dealt with by admin. Have no idea what some of their teachers look like. Had papers graded down for not wearing masks over their noses. And they have excessive headaches and fatigue. And I have a ton.
Time.
Thank you. Okay, back to an electronic submission.
Herb and Sherwood. Last July, during the Sherwood School Board meeting, parents, students, medical professionals, and concerned citizens spoke against forced masking in schools. Your own survey indicated that a majority of Sherwood school families did not want forced masking. In the following August meeting, the majority of the board expressed that the masking should be left up to each family. Yet the majority voted to comply with the state mandate despite heavy opposition to it. Your vote clearly signaled that you prioritized the finances of the district over the emotional, social, and developmental health of the students. However, it turns out your vote to comply with the state mandate did not keep you from taking a financial hit. Parents are pulling their kids from Sherwood Public Schools. Your own enrollment numbers show that you lost 400 students from the previous year. With an average per student spending of $12,450 in Oregon, you took a loss of almost $5 million. COVID is not more of a threat to children than drowning, heart disease, and the flu, as 2 years of data clearly shows. Now that the truth is finally being reported about the ineffectiveness of masking and the harm that has done to student education, you have the political cover to make masking optional. Alsea School District took back control and exposed that the daily OHA fine for noncompliance was just a scare tactic. Please listen to your conscience and do the right thing for the students who have suffered emotional, social, and developmental harm. There are 2 actions that I strongly request of the board to consider. Number 1, call a special meeting to make masking optional immediately. The OHA set a March 31st date to give school districts time to prepare. There is no preparation time needed to simply let students know they have their freedom back. Acting now may earn trust back from parents who have lost trust in the system. Number 2, if additional mandates come down from the state regarding medical choices, reject them. No more quarantines, no more segregation, no more contact tracing, no more COVID testing. Stop asking children to sacrifice their education for adults when the adults are supposed to be sacrificing for children. If you remain complicit, more families will out of Sherwood Public Schools and the erosion of enrollment will continue. The federal COVID relief funding will not last forever. If you believe the enrollment will pick up after masking is over, you haven't realized that Sherwood parents have woken up. There are serious concerns about the ODE's race and human sexuality education requirements, which are even more reasons to keep our kids out of government schools. It's not too late for the board to start showing courage to do what's best for Sherwood students. Act now before it's too late.
Okay, Natalie Lumley, you're welcome to the podium.
Hi, I'm just going to read what I wrote because I'm going to get too nervous. I have recently learned that Ridge's students are eating meals, breakfast and lunch on the floor, either in the hallways or in the cafeteria. I understand that current restrictions have spacing requirements, but I am not okay with any children having to eat meals on the filthy floor. There must be another solution, as every other Sherwood school has found tables to seat students at. I called all of the elementary schools. I didn't call the middle or high school. Some Sherwood schools are maintaining 3 feet, which would probably help immensely to be able to seat students. I know Ridges is maintaining 6 feet, which is continuing to apparently force my kids to have to eat on the floor. I have issue that Hawksview and Archer Glen also have kindergarten students eating on the floor. Those are the students that are the least aware of germs or cleanliness, or, oh, my sandwich just fell on the floor. That's okay, I can quickly pick it up. I've been assured that there's teachers monitoring the students to make sure they're not doing that, but there's no way you can preemptively stop a student from picking up, it happens that quick. So I know there's got to be some gross stuff that my son has eaten off the floor. And my students don't attend, obviously, Archer Glen or Hawksview, but it's not okay. My children have all told me, I have 3 of them going there, all different grades. They have all told me the floors are dirty to their naked eye. When they sit down, there's crumbs and dirt and such from kids eating there or walking there before. If they can see dirt and crumbs, then how can I be assured that it was sanitized previously? And even if the floors were cleaned, I'm still not okay with kids eating their food on the same floors that hundreds of students walk on after stepping in who knows what. I have reached out to the school, as have many other parents, and have not been able to get a response that anything will change. Just confirmation that they are indeed eating on the floor and there's no other solution. I imagine if our students were seated 3 feet apart, that would be a quick and easy solution to get them at the tables in the cafeteria, rather than insisting on 6 feet when it's not required. Sherwood schools were given funds upwards of $1.7 million for a federal COVID grant, and my kids have to eat on the floor. I'm not looking for an explanation of why it's happening. It's just not acceptable. Just find a way to get the students at all the schools off the floor for meal times.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Andre? Do we have additional online comments?
Yes, we do. Dr. Stephen in Sherwood. I'm writing to ask the district to update SSD students and families as soon as possible to the changes and potential impacts of our schools likely switching to voluntary masking by March 31st. I am hearing a lot of confusion in the community on what is actually changing, including the misconception that all COVID safety guidelines and policies are ending with the mask mandate. The ODE and the OEA recently both stated that schools choosing to switch to a voluntary masking policy before the end of the school year will likely have more days out of school for unvaccinated students and staff, should anticipate significant increases in workload from contact tracing and notification for teachers and staff, and may have classroom and school closures due to staffing constraints. Please help SSD students and families understand these new policies and how their own choices on masking and COVID vaccination may impact all SSD students, families, teachers, and our schools. I am particularly concerned for a timely update being available for our elementary school families, as OHA public data for Washington County on school-aged children suggests that only roughly half of our elementary students are currently COVID vaccinated. To the board, both the ODE and OEA also stress the importance of careful consideration of these new changes and collaborative planning with all stakeholders to determine the best approach to mask policy after the statewide mandate ends. I understand masking is a conversational topic in our community that you may not want to publicly discuss again. However, the significant change and impact voluntary masking may have on our schools was largely unknown when board made its policy decision in August. Therefore, I am also asking the board to have additional working sessions, re-engage with school administration, teachers, and SSD students and families, and put forth motions to either reaffirm or make changes to the August mask policy decision before March 31st. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Megan Thornton.
Am I tall enough? Can you actually hear me? I almost brought a step stool tonight. Good evening, directors and staff. My name is Megan Thornton, and I am a Middleton parent. Everyone has faults. School districts, governments, private businesses, and us as individuals. Our faults are our reminders of our humanness. Shining a light on the faults of an entity or person through peaceful and respectful protest is an honor, a privilege, and a responsibility we hold as Americans. In the fall, there was a work session where you deemed yourselves the team of 10, 5 board members, 5 district staff. As a team of 10, I expect to witness solidarity between each of you. As a team of 10, I expect to see a united front. It is shameful, disappointing, sad, and not respectful of the team of 10 to have participation by board members in a protest against the school district, which they were elected to represent, support, and aid for the betterment of our children. The Sherwood School Board is a nonpartisan board. It has been since inception, and there is no need to change that. The education of our children is not partisan. There are many opt-out opportunities for curriculum that parents do not want their child to learn in school. I get them weekly. As parents, we decide when our child attends or is withdrawn from school. As parents, we can file formal complaints against any employee of the district with whom we have an issue. There is no need for partisanship on the board when we, as parents, already have the ability to control the education of our children in real time. I'm ready for this board to be boring again. I'm ready to be able to trust you to do what is in the best interest of our children and their educators. I'm ready to not even know your names because you're doing your job. You're not causing stress, strife, and division in our community. I understand there is a national movement to take over school boards and city councils by people with a political bent towards ultra-conservatism. Honestly, conservatism isn't even the appropriate term. Extremism, propaganda, misinformation, and lies. Those are more appropriate terms for what's happening all over our nation. However, this movement has no place in the team of 10. If you are a board member with a political agenda, resign, run for a partisan seat elsewhere.
Thank you. Is there an additional online comment?
From Trevor and Sherwood. The Oregon Health Authority was granted permanent power to put in place any rule it sees fit to stop the spread of any illness, including COVID. Our schools should not submit to unending demands of an unelected bureaucratic entity. To do so will lead to a continued decline in teacher-student relations, overall quality of learning, and personal growth for our students. Our students stood against this permanent overreach and were met with threats to go to online school if the protests were too large. Once the students protested, they were met with harsh accusations against them by the school district. Don't punish the kids for fighting against what you are too scared to do yourself. Open the schools to those kids who wish to breathe freely and shed the fear and division that has been taking over the last 2 years.
Okay, next, Steve Robertson. The podium is yours.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Krista for her remarks. I appreciate everything she said. And I'm really, I don't know exactly what I want to say. I do want to say that I think we have made this mask issue we just took it way out of bounds. I know there were a couple of incidents that I don't condone, but come on, it was a protest. Everybody here just rah-rah BLM protests. We all thought that was wonderful. And those were kind of violent, if you want to be honest. For the people that are really concerned about the masks, I encourage you to look at Dr. Prasad, Prasad. He's an epidemiologist, and he's got a YouTube channel, and he's talking about how much damage we've done to especially the young kids who can't read faces. And nobody acknowledges that. All we talk about is we're protecting it from COVID, and we're sick of that. That's just not right. I'd also like to just say tonight that the emphasis I keep hearing is equity, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I just wonder, what are we? Is that all we're worried about is diversity, equity, inclusion? We're supposed to be teaching kids something. I don't know if anybody noticed, was it last night, the election in San Francisco? The most probably left-leaning liberal community, 70%, they recalled 3 board members because they're sick of the DEI. That's all they hear about. And the majority of a big part of that push was Asian parents who got sick of being told that they were part of white supremacy, because whenever they would argue about what are you doing to our kids? Why are you taking away our advanced classes? It was in the name of equity. Also, just want to make a point about the confidence in public schools is continuing to decline. And this is why, because people are getting sick of seeing that you're only interested in that one thing. And it really, I just think that you should try to get ahead of that curve. There's a huge movement for transparency. Some people call it allowing parents to see what's being taught, what's the curriculum, and especially teacher training. That's where it's at, teachers training. We see stuff on the internet, stuff has been leaked, and a lot of it is very appalling to an average parent. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Jones of Sherwood. As school board members, will you place an agenda item for next meeting to discuss in the meeting in public what Sherwood School District plans on responding with regards to the masking? If OHA drops the mask mandates and gives control back to the districts, what would Sherwood propose? Last fall, when OHA did the old rope-a-dope, Sherwood voted to abide by the OHA guidelines. Since that time, we have seen this become more and more political. At what point does the school board take the authority it has abdicated to the state bureaucrats? This was not done by the current board. This was done in years past. Elected officials are elected to represent the people that elected them, not the ODE or OHA and others in Salem. For the last 2 years, OHA and ODE has turned teachers into mask enforcement officers with no method of enforcement except to blackmail the elected school board members if they don't comply. Will you reach out to those unelected bureaucrats in Salem, ODE, OHA, and inform them that they do not sit on the school board in Sherwood? How long before the state neuters the school boards so they cannot even fire superintendents that lie, belittle, and just plain suck at their jobs? I do not blame Sherwood teachers or the school administrators or the school board. All of the animosity and contention in Sherwood would evaporate if masks were not required. If you fear for your life because of bird flu or swine flu or even COVID, I'm truly sorry. That being said, your right to feel safe at the cost of others, forcing others to act or behave according to your dictates and desires is nothing more than enslavement. Will the Sherwood School Board vote to allow teachers to get back to teaching rather than policing and return the medical decisions to the individual and their parents? Thank you for your time.
Okay, it looks like we have one more in-person comment, and is it Briar Lowe? You're welcome to the podium. The floor is yours.
Chair Hecker, I need just a second to reset the timer.
I'm here tonight to lend my support of the mask removal protest that took place last
Actually,
week.
Sorry, she's
What?
going to reset the timer.
Oh,
Sorry to interrupt you. You can
That's
start
okay.
over in just a minute.
That's okay.
I apologize.
No problem. I should put my glasses on anyway.
Apologies, the timer is being very touchy tonight. Okay, I think we are ready.
Okay, we're back on.
Before I start, I would like to say, none of us want to be here doing this. We don't. We want to work hard, earn our paycheck, stay home and be left alone. And we would trust you people to be taking care of our children in the best way possible. Things have changed. I'm here tonight to lend my support of the mask removal protest that took place last week. I participated at the middle school and at the district office. I appreciated the attitudes and behavior of the middle school administration and staff in regard to how the peaceful protest at those locations was received and executed. Thank you, Mrs. Funderhyde. What a wonderful learning experience that was for all those kids who participated. I was not at the high school to experience what happened there. Unfortunately, there were some bad actors who could have potentially undermined the event as a whole. Sadly, there are those that will focus on those bad actors and continue to be appalled and share their version of what happened. The same can be said for those bad actor teachers who are known as harassing and belittling students and those kids who struggle with mask wearing and/or are unvaccinated. I'm going to continue to be positive though, positive about those educators who do their jobs and keep the learning environments neutral. I'm also going to argue that the bad actors who joined in at that peaceful mask rally didn't overpower the overall message. The messages from those kids who froze their tails off standing outside in order to exercise their First Amendment rights. The peaceful protest was a success and those kids were heard around the nation. Great job, parents and kids. My ask of you, the board, moving forward, please stop being hypocritical and put our children first. In your description of events that took place last Tuesday, you shared the concern of safety. I'm curious what the concern was over. Safety of the administration, safety of the students. I still am unclear on what physical threat or violent activity that took place. If you speak out against one kind of violent activity, then you need to make your position general in that you speak out against all kinds of violent activity. If safety was of true concern to you, then one might argue that the fact that students who are masked and dealing with safety issues of their own every single day, not just medically speaking, but those who are harassed and hazed every day for not being vaccinated or not being compliant with keeping their masks over their noses. How about the Rainbow Out football game, which you condoned and supported? How safe was that? The heated debate that surrounded that event invited all the players. Were those people vetted who came to the game? Those who protested? The hypocrisy.
That's time.
Sorry. Ms. Lowe, thank you. Your time's up. So that concludes our in-person comments. So do we have additional electronic comments? Okay, then I'll let you just continue, Ms. Andre. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa and Sherwood. The public school administration and the city police knowingly provided one group of people preferential access to supposedly closed public school campuses, allowed hostile members of the preferred group to face off through a glass building wall against dozens of middle school children inside the building, and allowed hostile members to force their way into multiple high school building entrances while school was in session. The administration and police knowingly provided this access and these opportunities to a preferred group of people, all when the same district does not allow any other adult on site when school is in session. If the district safety policy for children and employees is that others are not permitted on the campus, then the district and police are mandated to enforce that safety policy for all groups and individuals. The district knowingly and openly violated its own safety policy. All of the children and employees trying to arrive and assembled in the public buildings were required to be there by state law or employment contract. They had no choice but to be held hostage, traumatized, and potentially physically injured. The right to a safe learning environment and safe workplace was knowingly violated by the public school district. After providing preferential access to one class of people, the demonstrators, both the district and the city police then purposely modeled prejudice and bigotry against another class of people, the non-residents. A resident of one American town has the same constitutional rights and the same human value as every other person in another American town. For public school and city leaders to call out a single class of people, the non-residents, as having no rights or value to demonstrate in one town is abhorrent. Acting with prejudice against those viewed as non-Sherwood residents is equal to acting against a group of people based on their race, immigration status, religion, or gender identity. It is vile when professed by public school administrators and city police. In singling out one class of people, the non-residents, public leaders furthered the mob mentality that is pervasive in this town. My family moved to this town 10 years ago with only one purpose: to serve the community as a city employee. After 10 years of residency and 9 years of city employment, my children and I are still regularly labeled as outsiders, not really from Sherwood, and harassed. Our human worth is continually judged by the bigots of this town, including school administrators and city leaders. Plus, the administration and police were factually wrong in their bigotry. There are Sherwood business owners who are non-residents. There are school district employees who are non-residents. There are Sherwood school children who have 2 homes, one inside and one outside the town. Stop degrading adults and children because they are not from Sherwood. Whitney from Tualatin. Will masks truly be optional for all students come March 31st, or will there be rules tied to mask wearing? If there are rules that will be attached, what are those rules and what is the basis on which they were created? Eric in Sherwood. Many public comments at previous board meetings informed the board that they must plan measures to ensure that volatile situations related to COVID do not become a threat to public safety, citing media coverage of the involvement of militant groups threatening schools. The board ignored this alarm and did not consider the matter. They dismissed a previous KLAR1 complaint from 8/5/2021 that warned them of this exact scenario as speculative. That left the district negligently unprepared for the predictable security breach that occurred at Sherwood High School on February 8th. The administration placed the designated protest area within 10 feet of the main entrance. This prevented safe access to education for the vast majority of students who honorably respect the importance of masking for community safety. It put the protesters in a position where there was no safe way to intervene when they rushed the entrance, physically shoving past 2 administrators, blocking their movement, and giving lawful clear instructions to not enter unmasked. Only the single SRO was present, despite the administration guaranteeing increased police presence. He was vastly outnumbered and overwhelmed and took no action to intervene, despite multiple state statute violations in his plain view, most seriously attempted assault of the superintendent and another staff member. The SRO and multiple staff members witnessed outside investigators create a plan encouraging the protesters to put on masks in order to enter the school, only to remove them once in class. They allowed the plotters inside, taking no apparent action to ensure that they remained masked in the building. Most concerning was a board member's enthusiastic embrace of 2 of the outside instigators and an invitation for them to speak at her protest at the district office just after they left SHS and joined her. I'm such a fan of yours. Thank you for being here. I follow you. I have so much respect for you. I show my kids who you are and what you're doing. You are an inspiration. You're going to make me cry. You are an inspiration to students everywhere. I would love for you to say a few words if you're willing, because you're such an inspiration. We are very, very thankful for your support. This is what the director said to these criminals who became famous a few months ago when they were responsible for a militant associated lockdown of 3 schools in Vancouver. The county court trespassed them and ordered them not to protest within a mile of schools. Since then, they have been trying to make a living as Instagram influencers who live stream themselves spreading chaos and disinformation at schools throughout the Pacific Northwest. The director then hugs and has a long, friendly conversation with a militant associate who was documented inside the Salem and Washington, D.C. Capitol buildings during the violent insurrections on December 21st and January 6th. These are the tactics the director judged praiseworthy and invited to speak at her supposedly peaceful protest. This is what she welcomed to our schools with the obvious and predictable results. In addition to violating the board's sworn oath to protect student and staff safety and their fiduciary responsibility Sorry, I should have auditorially said time. My apologies. Kristen and Sherwood. Attention SSD board and leaders. It is long past time to return the freedom of autonomy and choice back to our students and families. No matter what side of the aisle you sit on regarding the topic of masking in schools, you can find enough science to support whichever narrative you are pushing. This conflicting information should be enough to raise questions on the validity or lack thereof of taking the freedom of choice away from our families. My family, of whom we have several who fall under the COVID at risk category, believe that each individual should be able to choose how best to protect themselves and their families. For our family, we feel that the time of mask wearing as a necessity and a successful part of controlling COVID has come and passed. 2 weeks to flatten the curve was one thing, and we were all on board. But now, 2 years later, we feel the long-term effects of remaining masked for hours every single day outweighs what small benefit they may have had in controlling COVID. Below, we've listed a few of our concerns with forced masking. Number 1, nonverbal communication. Wearing a mask impairs the ability to see faces and expressions of peers, teachers, and staff. Reading people's faces is a critical component to clear communication, both in academic and social settings. Number 2, verbal communication. One of the concerns raised by our daughter is that she has a hard time hearing teachers through a mask. Oftentimes, directions and teaching come across muffled. Number 3, health. With the extracurricular activities that our student participates in, she is oftentimes in a mask for 8 to 10 hours a day. We have significant concerns around the long-term impacts of breathing through a bacteria-filled piece of cloth for that amount of time. Number 4, energy. Humans were designed to breathe in fresh, oxygenated air unrestricted. Our bodies have a natural filter system. Our daughter has told us countless stories of students who are unnecessarily breathless from walking to one class to the next at the middle school. This forced masking is not the right choice for our family. With all this being said, we want to make it clear that we do support those individuals who believe they need to wear masks to protect themselves, and we believe they should have the same freedom to make their choice as we are asking for our family. Thank you for hearing our stance on this topic. Please restore individual freedom of choice for our students and families. Respectfully, the Carr family. Nicole and Sherwood. End the mask mandates for our children prior to March 31. Make it optional for children to wear them. This is unhealthy, not backed in science, and complete child abuse. You should all be ashamed. Mandy and Sherwood. Board policy states that the board will evaluate the superintendent's performance, and I'm hoping the unilateral canceling of last week's meeting will be included in this year's performance review of the superintendent. Per board policy, no member of the board has the authority to act in the name of the board unless so authorized by a specific motion of the board. The affirmative vote of the majority of members of the board is required to transact any business. Stephanie and Sherwood. Good evening, all. I have several concerns that have affected my kids this school year and more current events leading up to now. My son has been repeatedly harassed and even followed and chased through the halls of the school by staff because of the way he was wearing a mask. The staff has caused so much stress and anxiety regarding the wearing of the mask. He doesn't even want to go to school because of the way that most, not all, of the staff at school have harassed and bullied him about the mask wearing. This is unacceptable and very distracting to his learning environment. He has been docked academic grade points and even singled out and profiled by staff because of the mask wearing. How does that have anything to do with academics? It is the personal choice of the individual as to what is done to their own body and never anyone else's choice but our own, period. Leading up to the more current events. On Tuesday, 2/8, my son made the choice to enter the school with no mask and to open the door into the vestibule for his friends and fellow students to enter their school with him so they could attend first period. He was then suspended from school for the remainder of the week and told that because he opened the door for his friends to enter the school with him in an attempt to get to class, he created an unsafe situation and was disruptive. The notice of suspension actually says insubordination and inappropriate behavior. Nothing that he did on that day was hurtful, disrespectful, or unsafe for any students or staff. The students wanted to attend school as they do with their peers every week. The staff has slandered his character and punished him for no reason. It is absolutely unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I have yet to receive an explanation from the administration regarding my son's suspension. My son deserves an apology for the wrongful suspension to be removed. Alyssa in Sherwood. Dear Sherwood School Board members, thank you for listening to and considering today's public comment and future decision-making opportunities. For simplicity's sake, I have listed out my comments concerns. Number 1, canceling the board meeting last week was pathetic. Sherwood is full of leaders and our school board meetings need to reflect the strength and leadership that exists within our community. The individuals who acted upon personal emotion and felt the need to postpone the previously scheduled meeting have demonstrated they are unable to fill their duties of the job. The elected board has a responsibility to assure taxpayers are getting the most for their tax dollars. Canceling the meeting due to childlike emotional distress was unprofessional and not in the best interest of the taxpayers or students. Number 2, there are many employees of SSD that deserve special recognition for their hard work. The expense of 2 wellness days is misuse of taxpayer dollars. When SSD employees have been posting pictures on social media of their vacations on days where school is in session, you'll find community members not agreeing that additional wellness days are essential district-wide. That was not a kid's first decision. Number 3, masks. Follow the science of your choice. Wearing masks needs to be made optional for all at all times and in all places. Number 4, the district needs to stop dividing the community by treating vaccinated individuals differently than unvaccinated. Number 5, leave medicine and politics for discussion outside school doors. Teachers should be emailing parents about homework or test score slipping, not about a mask repeatedly under the children's nose. Please regain a solid focus on educating our children. Number 6, remember we are one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your time, consideration, and service. Lindsay and Sherwood. Dear board members, I would first like to express my gratitude to the board members I saw at the protest event this week. I am grateful they were supporting their children as well as the community. Exercising our constitutional rights is very important. It would have been a big step towards building trust back if more district personnel would have been permitted to express their feelings as well. Next, I wish my comments were related to items on the agenda this evening. I would like to see more communication of action taken on controversial curriculum. I have heard so many comments for months now on both sides of the issues at hand, yet very little, if any, action has been taken to discuss these hot topic items. Please make more statements of clarification, at least on mass, demonstration this week, politics in the classrooms, and please update us on actions taken by our new DEI department. At a time of such divisions, Sherwood is holding out. The people of this town want to be respectful and accepting, but students and staff are afraid to speak up. Students have been bullied and heckled for their political beliefs. We need strong leaders who are willing to do hard things. Please address the hot topics of the day and let's make some progress. Thank you. Jane and Sherwood. I am concerned that there were board members involved with the anti-mask protests. Is that allowed? When the mask mandate is lifted, how will we adjust exposure response? What accommodations is our district making for children who cannot come to school due to risk of infection? Please have a public plan for the next meeting. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Andre, and thank you for everyone that came to provide public comment. So with that, the next board meeting will be on March 9th, so about 3 weeks away. And with that, we will adjourn. And thank you everyone for great behavior. I appreciate it.